Chapter 2551. Someone quoted the classics to her. Little girl, let me give you some knowledge. The Cloud Underworld continent used to belong to the Purple Moon Empire 100 years ago, and the one who sat on the throne was from the June family. 60 years ago, it was divided into countless small countries. Later, these small countries annexed each other, and today, there are 3 countries and other affiliated countries. These years, these countries have been fighting with each other, and the wars have been endless. It's just a few families who are fighting for territory, but it's us who are suffering. The ancestor of the Ji family was just a general of the June family 100 years ago. Yes, the rise and fall of the people are suffering. We have long been tired of these days of fighting and killing. The people will support whoever gives them a stable life. If this third Prince June can really unify this continent and free the people from the suffering of war, the people will naturally support him. Yes, a fine bird chooses a good tree to nest in, and we also choose a good ruler to support. Jiyu had never heard of these theories, but they seemed to be reasonable. Jiyu paused for a while and then said, "What you said is simply heartless. Didn't that Emperor Yuanyu give you a good life? He didn't start any wars." Someone sneered again. Emperor Yuanyu? That fatuous ruler? What else can he do other than composing poems? He only believes in the good words of treacherous officials, and doesn't listen to any advice from loyal officials. How many virtuous officials has he persecuted? In order to celebrate his precious daughter's birthday, he imposed a 30% tax on the people. Who knows how many people have lost their homes because of him? Someone even looked at Jiyu. Little girl, have you been living in some kind of paradise before? How come you don't know anything? You don't know about other things, but you should know about the drought in Tiangong State last year, right? The whole state had no harvest, and that fatuous ruler not only did not exempt them, but also increased the tax by 30%. How many people were killed because of him? That year, there were starving people everywhere. There were many people who died of starvation on the streets. The people had no way to survive and revolted, but they were suppressed by the fatuous ruler. Those who revolted were just ordinary people who couldn't survive. As long as they were given food, they would naturally be good people. But after these people surrendered, how did the fatuous ruler deal with them? An imperial edict was issued and 50,000 people were buried alive. Now Tiangong State is a ghost town. These people started to talk about the atrocities of Full Moon Emperor. Suddenly there was an uproar. At first, Jiyu's face turned pale, but then she clenched her fists. This must be a trap set up by Jun Luyi. He had purposely lured her here. The words that these people were saying must have been taught long ago, just to let her hear them. He wanted her to understand that the Jun family's extermination of Jiyu country was an irresistible trend. It was the will of the heavens and the will of the people. The truth was definitely not like that. Her imperial father was so kind. How could he be a tyrant? Slander. Despicable. Pa. The teacup in her hand was crushed by her. Jun Liuya's expression changed. He grabbed her hand and forcefully pried it open. There were a few pieces of porcelain stuck in her palm, and blood was quickly seeping out. Damn it! Jun Liuya cursed under his breath, and picked out the pieces of porcelain. He then called for someone to bring some clean water to clean her wounds. During this period, Jiyu struggled countless times, but was forcefully restrained by him. After cleaning her wounds, he applied some medicine on her wounds and bandaged them. The commotion at her table had successfully stopped those people from criticizing the Full Moon Emperor. Chapter 2552. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Under Jun Liuya's cold aura, they finally shut their mouths and went on to discuss other things. Jiyu, these people weren't instigated by this prince. Jun Liuya brought her out of the restaurant. She was injured and naturally couldn't move around. Jun Liuya clapped his hands a few times, and a hidden guard drove a carriage out of the shadows and stopped in front of the two. Jun Liuya wanted to help her into the carriage, but she flung him away. She jumped into the carriage herself and got in. Jun Liuya stopped under the carriage and then got in as well. He explained to her in a deep voice. Liar! Liar! Jiyu's entire body was trembling. She bit her lips and closed her eyes, refusing to say a word. Jun Liuya looked at her for a moment. You don't believe me? Believe him? If she believed him again, she would be the #1 fool in the world. This person was using her for everything. In order to make her willing, he would do anything. The atmosphere in the carriage was a bit stiff. Although Ji Yu didn't say anything, her body language said one thing. I don't believe you. She refused to believe him again. Jun Liuya suddenly smiled and leaned against the carriage. You're sure that these people were arranged by this prince, right? Ji Yu still didn't answer. Do you think this prince would do something so senseless? Would he make such a low-level mistake? Jun Liuya's voice was cold. Ji Yu bit her lips. The people in the restaurant looked like ordinary people, and didn't seem like they were arranged by someone. Could it be that what they said was true? No. Of course not. Her imperial father was the most benevolent imperial father. He definitely wouldn't be as cruel as those people said. Fake. It's all fake. He was only using her. He was treating her well now with a motive. In order to make her willing, he deliberately sent people to slander her imperial father. It must be like this. She had to believe in her imperial father. The only person she could trust now was her imperial father. She couldn't help but touch the jade pendant on her waist, as if she wanted to gain some energy from it. Today she came out empty-handed. She didn't see half of her imperial father's old subordinates. No, she couldn't fall out with Jun Liuya now. Otherwise, he might fly into a rage and not let her out again. She couldn't reveal her true feelings, since he knew how to act. Then she knew how to act too. Ji Yu slowly raised her head and bit her lips. You're right. This mistake is indeed very low level. It doesn't seem like something someone like you would do. Maybe I really misunderstood you. In order to increase her sincerity, Ji Yu took the initiative to put her hand in his. You don't be angry. I just don't believe imperial father is like this. Her last sentence was soft and even a little nasal. Jun Liuya slowly reached out and hugged her. I'm not angry. It's good that you understand. Ji Yu took the opportunity to lean her head on his shoulder. I'm a little bored and don't want to go back to the palace. Can you take me around again? Jun Liuya looked at her in his arms and sighed. All right. The storm seemed to have passed just like that. The two of them walked around the streets, drank tea in a tea house, went to a theater, and even went to the bridge to watch a juggling show. Ji Yu was probably really bored in the palace for too long. After coming out, she liked to join the crowd and go wherever there were many people. Of course, Jun Liuya accompanied her the entire time. Ji Yu played outside for 3 days. In these 3 days, she still didn't contact any of her old subordinates. Chapter 2553. Ji Yu played outside for 3 days. In these 3 days, she still didn't contact any of her old subordinates. Instead, she heard a lot of gossip about her father in the tea houses, wine shops, and streets. Although the content was different from what she heard in the restaurant that day, the meaning was similar. Her father wasn't a benevolent ruler in these people's eyes, but a fatuous ruler. Ji Yu's demise didn't make these people feel grief or indignation. Instead, it was as if they had escaped from a sea of bitterness. Even the children playing on the streets sang this kind of nursery rhyme. Ji Yu's heart sank. These tea houses and wine shops were all because she pulled Jun Liuya into them on the spur of the moment. Jun Liuya shouldn't have had time to arrange for people to slander her father. Moreover, people with this kind of view could be seen everywhere. Jun Liuya couldn't have bribed all the people in the city to be his accomplices, right? Moreover, Ji Yu couldn't help but admit that Ziyu City was much more prosperous than before. The people seemed to be living and working in peace. Even the beggars on the streets were much less than before. Could it be that her father was really a fatuous ruler? Ji Yu subconsciously didn't believe this, but all the signs made her believe it. In the end, she didn't think about this problem anymore. Only one thought circled her mind. Whether her father was a fatuous ruler or a wise ruler, he was still the one who loved her the most. She must save her father and mother. Even if she didn't restore the country, it would be good to just live in seclusion in the fields. She still didn't find anything in these 3 days. No one contacted her. The so-called old subordinates seemed to be a dream. Were they too afraid of being caught and hid too well? Or was she using the wrong method? Or was it because Jun Liuya was always by her side? So those old subordinates didn't dare to contact her, because they were afraid of being exposed. Yes, it must be the last reason. But how could it be easy to get rid of Junlioya? These few days, Junlioya had been accompanying her. They traveled during the day and slept together at night. The two of them had already broken through the last line of defense. Junlioya naturally didn't want to waste their beautiful time together. He wanted her almost every night. In order to make him lower his guard, Jiyu didn't reject him. Occasionally, she would even respond when they were being intimate. Of course, Junlioya had been very good to her. Whenever he had time, he would take her out to play and walk hand in hand with her. He didn't even try to hide it from his suspected fiancé. That time, when Junlioya had brought her out, they had walked across Hongxiang in the palace. Jiyu had seen with her own eyes how Hongxiang's face had turned pale, but she had still forced a smile to greet Junlioya. Junlioya had only nodded at Hongxiang, then pulled Jiyu's hand and left. He did not even look back, as if he did not care about his fiancée at all. He was really good to her, so good that all the maids in the palace were jealous. If she hadn't eavesdropped on their conversation in the Red Cloud's palace that day, Jiyu would have foolishly fallen in again. Only by replaying those words in her mind over and over again, every night could she stop herself from falling in love with him. Princess, please look towards the southeast window. In an inconspicuous tea house, Jiyu was drinking tea alone when a child in tattered clothes suddenly ran over and asked her for money. She took out one tael of silver and gave it to the child. When the child took the money, he also stuffed a note into her hand. This was the content of the note. Chapter 2554. Jiyu calmly hid the note in her sleeve and looked in that direction. There was an inconspicuous man sitting at the table. He had a sallow complexion and a small mustache. His appearance was very ordinary, and he was the kind of person who would not be recognized even if he was thrown into a crowd. However, his eyes were a little familiar. Seeing Jiyu looking over, he smiled at her and casually raised his teacup. The white jade ring on his finger shone brightly. It's him. Jiyu's heart jumped. Maybe because she had been very obedient these days, Junlioya let down his guard. After accompanying her for 3 days, he had other matters to attend to. He was so busy that he was dizzy from day to night. After 2 days of being cooped up in the palace, Jiyu was a little listless. She asked to go out for a walk. Junlioya pondered for a moment and then agreed. However, he sent 4 shadow guards with strong martial arts to follow her. Jiyu took the 4 shadow guards for a day. In the afternoon, she went to a tea house to have afternoon tea. She didn't expect to get such a pleasant surprise. The person who passed her the note was none other than the son of Jiyu's great general, Wu Tianxi. Wu Tianxi was very favored by the emperor and had the highest position among the generals. He had military power and was equivalent to the general of the army. He was also very loyal to the emperor. It was rumored that he died when Jiyu's city fell. Wu Liqian, on the other hand, was his youngest son. He was good at martial arts and was 3 years older than Jiyu. He played with Jiyu when they were young and could be considered as childhood sweethearts. When he grew up, he had a special feeling for Jiyu. He once asked his father to propose to the emperor on his behalf. However, at that time, Jiyu was too playful and didn't have any feelings for Wu Liqian. She refused without thinking. The emperor naturally wouldn't force his daughter, and the marriage was cancelled. Fortunately, Wu Liqian didn't care and still treated Jiyu well. He took care of her like an older brother. Every time he saw her, he would be at her beck and call. After the city fell, Jiyu didn't have any news about him. She thought he had died for the country. She didn't expect to meet him here. Could he be father's old subordinate? Most likely. Wu Liqian changed his appearance. If it wasn't for the ring, Jiyu wouldn't dare to recognize him. Of course, he couldn't go up and acknowledge her now. She still had 4 of Junlioya's shadow guards by her side. She glanced at Wu Liqian again, her mind quickly thinking of how to get rid of the 4 dark guards and Wu Liqian. Wu Liqian lowered his head and wrote something on a piece of paper, then quietly put it under his teacup. Then, he glanced at Jiyu again, then called the waiter to pay the bill and got up to leave. As soon as he left, Jiyu also called the waiter to pay the bill. When she passed by the table where Wu Liqian was sitting, she deliberately bumped into the table. She staggered and took the opportunity to hold on to the table. At the same time, she also hooked the note under the teacup into her palm. Jiyu did all of this extremely smoothly, and the 4 shadow guards following her did not see her little movements. The 4 of them were originally drinking tea at a table not far from her. When they saw her get up, they followed her out of the room. Jiyu used the excuse of going to the toilet and read the second note left by Wu Liqian. There were only a few words on it. Stay in the earth-ranked room of the Tianyik Tavern. She had finally contacted her own people. He finally saw a glimmer of hope. She was no longer fighting alone. She now had an ally. Jiyu's palms were sweating. She carefully destroyed the 2 notes and made sure that she didn't leave any traces behind. Then she walked out. Chapter 2555. It was natural for Jiyu to stay in the earth room of the Tianyik Tavern. The 4 secret guards had been ordered by Jun Liuya to only be responsible for Jiyu's personal safety and not to interfere with her fun. It was understandable that she wanted to rest in the tavern when she was tired from walking. The 4 secret guards only went into the room to check in advance. After confirming that it was safe, they asked Jiyu to come in and rest. The 4 of them guarded the door. Jiyu's parents were still trapped in the palace. Jun Liuya naturally knew that Jiyu wouldn't run away. So although the 4 guards were good at martial arts, they weren't very vigilant. The 4 of them had been following her for half a day and were bored. Now that she went in to rest, the 4 of them chatted outside to pass the time. After Jiyu entered the room, she looked around but didn't see anything left by Wu Liqian. Just as she was feeling puzzled, a light sound came from the bed. The bedboard flipped and a person appeared out of thin air. It turned out that there was a secret passage on the bed. This person was dressed in an ordinary scholar's attire, but he had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. It was Wu Liqian. As soon as he came out, he gestured to Jiyu, indicating for her to go over. Jiyu paused for a moment, but still walked to the bed. Jiyu, let's talk in the secret passage. It's inconvenient here. Wu Liqian transmitted his voice to her, and then stretched out his hand to her. Jiyu steeled her heart, and held his hand as she jumped onto the bed. A soft sound came from the bed. It was not loud, as if a human body had casually turned over on the bed. However, after this sound, Jiyu's vision blurred. When she regained her composure and opened her eyes again, she was already in a dark passage. The dark passage was long and dark. Fortunately, Wu Liqian was prepared. He held a night pearl in his hand. With the light of the night pearl, Jiyu could barely see the surrounding scenery. She was surprised to find that Wu Liqian wasn't the only one in the secret passage. There was also a young woman. Jiyu suddenly had a strange feeling in her heart. She wasn't jealous of this woman, but because this woman was wearing the same clothes as her. Even their figures were very similar. As for their facial features, there were also some similarities. In the darkness, Jiyu thought she was looking at her twin sister. That woman kept staring at Jiyu, her gaze strange and penetrating. When Jiyu was stared at by her, she had the illusion that she could see through her bones. She is. Jiyu frowned. She didn't like this kind of gaze. Kai-yi, Wu Liqian said briefly and waved his hand toward the girl. Kai-yi, you go up. The woman nodded and pushed open the cover above the secret passage. She flipped over, and the cover returned to its original state. The woman also disappeared without a trace. What are you doing? Jiyu was confused. Jiyu, I finally saved you. This is not the place to talk. I'll take you away. Wu Liqian didn't want to explain more, so he took Jiyu's hand and walked away. Jiyu's heart skipped a beat, but her feet didn't move. You want to take me away? Of course. Jiyu, I came here today to help you escape. God has mercy on me. I've been waiting for this day. You don't know how long I've been planning for this day. How many nights I couldn't sleep. Wu Liqian was still holding her hand. His eyes were full of relief. Well, let's go. I'll tell you the details after we safely escape from the city. His words were full of affection, but Jiyu shook her head. No, I can't go with you. Chapter 2556. Wu Liqian frowned. Why? Jiyu, do you really want to stay by that Azura bastard's side and be his woman? No way, right? He's the enemy who destroyed your country. Jiyu took a deep breath and shook her head. No. Wu Liqian, my father and mother are still in his hands and trapped in the palace. She looked at him with sparkling eyes. Have you been moving around outside the city to save them? Do you have any good ideas? Wu Liqian choked. He paused for a moment before saying, Jiyu, the matter of saving His Majesty can wait until you escape from here. For now you should come with me. He pulled her small hand and walked away. Jiyu's expression changed, and she pulled her hand out of his palm. This won't do. If I escape, Jun Liuye will harm my father and mother. When Jun Liuye was with her, he had hinted that if she escaped, he wouldn't be polite to her parents anymore. Wu Liqian sighed in relief. Don't worry, Jun Liuye won't find out that you escaped. Sai will pretend to be you and stay by his side, waiting for an opportunity to kill him. Of course, she will also try to save your father and mother. Jiyu was stunned. Sai will pretend to be me? I'm afraid that won't work. Her appearance isn't very similar to mine. At most, it's about 30% similar. Wu Liqian looked proud. Jiyu Tsai is a faceless person. No matter who she pretends to be, she won't be exposed. A faceless person? Jiyu had heard of such people before. It was said that their bones were arranged in a strange way, especially the bones on the face, which could change shape at will. When she wanted to pretend to be someone, she would adjust her body and facial muscles to the point where she could pass off as the real person. This kind of person was born with a strong imitation ability. They only needed to look at someone for a moment to imitate their voice and movements. Even their own family members might not be able to tell the difference. Of course, this kind of person was very rare. Jiyu had only heard of them, but never seen them. She didn't expect to meet one today. Can she pretend to be anyone? Wu Liqian shook his head. That's not it. Because of her body, Sai can only pretend to be a slim woman. But she only looks like me about 40 to 50%. Jiyu's heart was in a mess, and she couldn't tell what she was feeling. Her appearance is based on my description. Now that she has seen the real you, she will naturally adjust her appearance to look exactly like you. No one would be able to tell. Even if she stays by Jun Liuye's side, Jun Liuye won't notice. Wu Liqian reassured her. Jiyu felt extremely uncomfortable when she thought of another woman pretending to be her and staying by Jun Liuye's side. Even doing things between husband and wife. She was stunned for a moment. Wu Liqian continued. Kai Yi's martial arts are also very good, comparable to mine. If she disguises herself as you and stays by Jun Liuye's side, she will definitely find a good opportunity to assassinate him and kill him in one fell swoop. This way, we will have avenged you and also avenged our Jiyu country. Wu Liqian's eyes sparkled. Apparently, he was very confident in Kai Yi. Jiyu's expression changed slightly. She knew about Wu Liqian's martial arts. Although he couldn't compare to Jun Liuye, he was still an expert among experts. Back then, Imperial Father also praised him endlessly, saying that he was the #1 expert in Jiyu country. When Jiyu rejected the marriage that day, Yuanyu Emperor was very regretful. Now Kai Yi's martial arts were really as good as Wu Liqian's. Chapter 2557. Now that Kai Yi's martial arts were as high as Wu Liqian's, and she had disguised herself as her to stay by Jun Liuye's side, Jun Liuye would definitely not be on guard. If she were to assassinate Jun Liuye under the bed, she would most likely succeed. The image of Jun Liuye falling down with a face full of disbelief seemed to flash before her eyes. Her heart kept falling, and her hands and feet were slightly cold. She knew that she hated him, and he was the enemy who had ruthlessly used her to destroy her country. She should be hoping for his death, hoping that he would be killed. If he died, she should be very happy. But Wu Liqian did not know when he had grabbed her hand again. Jiyu, I've been worried about you these days. You've never been wronged before, and I don't know what kind of torture you'll suffer in his hands. Just thinking about it makes me unable to sleep at night. Jiyu. His words were sweet, and his eyes fell on Jiyu's face. His eyes became deeper and deeper, and his voice became deeper. Jiyu. His palm was hot, and he held her hand tightly. Jiyu subconsciously wanted to shake him off, but his fingers were holding her so tightly that she could not shake him off. His eyes were also burning, as if he wanted to swallow her up. Ji Yu had never seen him like this, and her heart was slightly flustered. She struggled again. "Liqian, let go of me first." Wu Liqian did not let go of her, and instead pulled her into his embrace. "Ji Yu, I really missed you. We're finally together." His embrace was hot, and his arms were tightly wrapped around her waist, so tight that she almost could not breathe. Ji Yu's face turned red. He had never dared to treat her like this before. He had always been careful in front of her, looking at her as if she was the moon in the sky. He had never dared to force her. But now, his embrace made Ji Yu irritated. She struggled a few times, but to no avail. Instead, he hugged her even tighter. Anger rose in her heart, and her face sank. She shouted, "Impudent! Wu Liqian, let go." Her shout was quite imposing. Wu Liqian's arms stiffened, but he did not intend to let go. His eyes stared at her, and the bottom of his eyes became more passionate. "Ji Yu, we're together from now on. I'll treat you well." He lowered his head and kissed her. Slap. A crisp and resounding slap sounded. Ji Yu couldn't break free from his grip, and finally made her move. In her nervousness, she used quite a bit of strength, and slapped Wu Liqian's face to the side, leaving a palm print on his weak-colored face. "You." Wu Liqian's face suddenly changed. He grabbed her wrist and narrowed his eyes dangerously. "You hit me. Ji Yu. I saved you, and this is how you repay me." When he was angry, he actually had a dangerous temperament. He was as fierce as an enraged wolf. Ji Yu froze. She was not used to this kind of Wu Liqian. Her wrist was almost crushed by him. She had always been afraid of pain, and her face immediately turned pale. "Wu Liqian, how dare you? How dare you offend this princess? Let go. Let go of me." She struggled desperately. Although this secret passageway was tightly sealed and had good soundproofing, it was still under the guest room. If they really made too much noise, it would easily alarm the people above. The guard who was waiting outside the door heard the commotion and was worried. He immediately knocked on the door and asked, "Princess, are you all right?" Ji Yu's lazy voice came from inside the room. "I'm fine. Princess, please open the door. There seems to be something wrong in the room. This subordinate will come in." A shadow guard was more careful. After he respectfully reported, he paused for a moment before opening the door and walking in. Chapter 2558. It was very quiet in the room, and there was a person lying on the bed. The 4 secret guards quickly looked around the room, but they couldn't find anything wrong. They were still worried, so they bowed towards the bed. This subordinate asked the princess to come out. His Highness had given her to them, so they couldn't let anything happen to her. The bed curtain was gently lifted up, revealing a beautiful face. "What are you doing? Can't you let me rest?" After the 4 secret guards saw her face, they let out a sigh of relief. "Princess, there was a strange sound in the room. Is there something wrong?" "What's wrong?" "This princess was sleeping soundly, and was woken up by you." The girl had an unhappy look on her face. The 4 secret guards looked at each other before bowing and saying, "Princess, please forgive us." Then they left. In the secret passage, Wu Liqian tightly covered Ji Yu's mouth and nose, stopping her from making a noise. Hearing that it was quiet, he opened his hand a little to let her breathe, but he didn't let her go. "All right, it's my fault. Ji Yu, don't make a noise." Ji Yu's face turned red, almost being covered to death by his hand. She could only nod, and Wu Liqian let go of her waist, but he didn't let go of her hand. "Ji Yu, this place is dangerous. It's not the place to talk. We can talk after we leave." He quickly pulled her forward. Ji Yu couldn't help running a few steps with him. She was very anxious and shouted, "I can't go with you right now. Let go." She felt that something was wrong and didn't want to leave with him. "Wu Liqian, if you don't let go, I'll scream." Her body became tense. Wu Liqian gave a sigh. "All right, don't scream, I'll let go." Letting go, Ji Yu's heart relaxed. When she was about to take her hand back, she felt a pain in the back of her head. Her vision turned dark and her body fell down. When she woke up again, she was in a rather simple and crude room. The candlelight flickered, and the room was filled with a dim yellow light. It didn't seem like a building, but rather an underground palace. She moved a bit, but her head was still dizzy and the back of her head hurt. A little maidservant was standing by the bed. When she saw her open her eyes, her face lit up with joy. "Princess, you woke up." Jiyu looked around, and then looked at the servant girl. A bad feeling rose in her heart. "Where is this?" The servant girl smiled. "This is the place where we temporarily discuss matters. Princess, please follow this servant. The Lord invites you in." "My lord? Wuliqian?" He knocked her out and brought her here. And now he wanted her, the princess, to meet his subordinate? Jiyu took a deep breath and said coldly, "Let Wuliqian come to see me." She had her own imposing manner. The young maidservant paused for a moment, then went out to call for her. A moment later, the door opened and two people walked in, one old and one young. When Jiyu saw the two of them clearly, she suddenly sat up. Her gaze fell on the hale and hearty old man who was walking like a tiger, and she blurted out, "General Wu." That old man was actually General Wu Tianxi, who was rumored to have died for his country. He was Wu Liqian's father. He hadn't died, but he had appeared here. Wu Tianxi laughed heartily. His voice was as loud as a bell. "My dear niece, you have suffered a lot these days." Jiyu's heart sank. She was the monarch, and he was the subject. He should never call her dear niece, but should prostrate himself on the ground, kowtow, and respectfully call her your highness. But now he didn't have the slightest intention to kneel down. Chapter 2559. Everyone, this is our honorable Princess Jiyu. The heavens have blessed our Jiyu Empire. We have finally rescued Jiyu Saintis. From now on, we have to work together to rebuild our Jiyu Empire. On a 3-feet-high platform, Jiyu, Wu Tianxi, and Wu Liqian stood. Below the platform, there were thousands of Jiyu Empire soldiers. Under the illumination of the surrounding torches, the soldiers' faces flickered, like the soldiers of hell in the dark night. Thousands of people lined up neatly, stretching all the way to the depths of the cave. The heavens have blessed our Jiyu Empire. We pledge our loyalty to General Wu. These people shouted together with an earth-shattering momentum. Wu Tianxi waved his hand in satisfaction and said, "Jiyu Saintis has been engaged to my son Liqian a few days ago. From today onwards, my Wu family will take on the responsibility of restoring Jiyu Empire. From today onwards, Jiyu Saintis will be the empress of Jiyu Empire. Everyone will rebuild their homeland under her leadership." He spoke with great enthusiasm, causing the blood of the soldiers below to boil, as they shouted their slogans loudly. Jiyu stood there with a pale face, pursing her lips without saying anything. Yesterday, after she met Wu Tianxi and his son, she talked with them for a while. According to Wu Tianxi himself, that day, he fought a bloody battle with the enemy. However, he was outnumbered and lost in the end. He was supposed to die for his country, but because of his heavy injuries, he fainted on the battlefield. Wu Liqian carried him out of the pile of corpses, and luckily escaped with his life. The father and son pair then secretly found a few trusted surviving generals, and fled into the depths of the mountains. In the depths of the mountains, they inadvertently discovered this former dynasty mausoleum that could hold 10,000 people. They secretly contacted their old subordinates, and gradually, these several thousand soldiers were gathered. Everyone here prepared their troops, and waited for the right time to restore Jiyu Empire. A few days ago, they learned that Jiyu was not dead, so they began to plan a rescue plan. They secretly watched for many days, and finally made their move today. Wu Tianxi spoke passionately, saying a lot of plans to restore the empire, but he did not mention anything about rescuing the Full Moon Emperor. He was just asking for credit from Jiyu. In the end, Jiyu couldn't help but tell Wu Tianxi that her father and mother were still alive and imprisoned in the palace. She asked Wu Tianxi to find a way to save them. Wu Tianxi was vague. One moment, she said that His Majesty would definitely try to rescue her. The next moment, she said that the palace was heavily guarded. It was simply a fool's dream to rescue someone from inside. The more Jiyu listened, the colder her heart became. This Wu Tianxi could be said to be her father's most trusted minister, and also the most loyal one. The day before yesterday, her imperial father had told her that it would be great if Wu Tianxi was one of his former subordinates. He would definitely risk his life to save them. Now, Wu Tianxi was indeed not dead, and he had gathered so many subordinates, but he had no intention of saving the emperor. Although Ji Yu was bitterly disappointed, she also knew that this was not the time to throw a princess tantrum. She could only lower her voice and beg in every possible way. Wu Tianxi readily agreed, but then he changed the topic. He said that the full moon emperor used to be a slave, so he didn't do much to the existing soldiers. Now that everyone was in danger, he had no good reason to encourage these people to take such a big risk to save the full moon emperor. He talked a lot, but the overall meaning was that he did not have the right to give a death order to save the full moon emperor. So he must have another identity. Ji Yu naturally asked him what identity he wanted, but he told her his ultimate goal. Chapter 2560. He wanted Ji Yu to marry his son Wu Liqian. This way, they would be a family, and he would have a legitimate reason to save the Yuanyue emperor and his wife. His words made Ji Yu speechless, as if she was struck by lightning. Although she and Wu Liqian grew up together, she didn't have any feelings for him. Now he wanted her to marry him. She found it hard to accept, and her first reaction was to refuse. But before she could completely refuse, Wu Tianxi raised his eyebrows and said angrily, "In this case, saving your parents is a matter of risking your life. My father and I can even risk our lives, but you can't even risk your whole life? How can you be so unfilial? Besides, Lu Qian is good at both martial arts and literature. How is he not good enough for you? Besides, you two grew up together. Lu Qian likes you very much. If you marry him, he will only treat you well, share your burdens and serve you." Ji Yu didn't know what to say in response to his angry words. In addition, Wu Liqian had been gently persuading her and reasoning with her. The father and son preached, one playing the good cop, and the other playing the bad cop. In the end, Wu Tianxi said harshly, "Princess Ji Yu, if you don't agree to such a small condition, then don't expect us to send people to save your parents. We can't persuade the other soldiers to save them." At this point, Ji Yu was forced to a dead end by the father and son. Ordinary rejection was useless. She made up her mind and said, "General Wu, it's not that Ji Yu doesn't know what's good for her, but Ji Yu has been tainted by Jun Liuye and is no longer a virgin. I'm afraid I'm not good enough for your son." Wu Tianxi and Wu Tianxi's faces changed when they heard this. They looked at each other. In the end, Wu Tianxi said, "Ji Yu, you didn't want this to happen in this chaotic world. You were forced. Uncle doesn't blame you. Lu Qian has always liked you. He won't dislike you." Wu Liqian also expressed his attitude, saying that he won't dislike her and will still marry her. They were determined to force her to marry him. Now that Ji Yu was in their territory, she had to submit. Besides, she still needed to rely on them to save her parents. Jun Liuye's figure flashed across her mind, and her heart twisted. With such a blood feud between them, she was destined to have no fate with him. However, she was still deeply in love with him. Even though she knew that he was only using her, it wasn't that easy for her to completely abandon this relationship. She closed her eyes slightly. At this point, there was nothing she couldn't give up, and there was nothing she couldn't lose. She just wanted to save her parents, even if she had to die for it. In the end, she agreed to the father and son's request, but she also had her own conditions. The engagement had to wait until after she rescued her parents. After another round of argument, the Wu family's father and son finally agreed to Ji Yu's condition. They would hold the engagement ceremony after they rescued Emperor Yuan Yu and his wife. But Wu Tianxi wanted to announce that Ji Yu was her daughter-in-law at the pep rally tomorrow. Of course, he still came up with a dignified reason, saying that he was doing this to boost morale and make it easier to save people. Ji Yu could only agree, which led to the scene just now. The cheers below were thunderous, but Ji Yu's heart was as cold as ice. The person he loved the most was using him, and even his most loyal subjects had ulterior motives. Chapter 2561. A princess's love was insignificant in the struggle for power in the country. Her life was like duckweed now, and the direction was completely out of her control. Jun Liuye's figure flashed in her mind again. Her heart throbbed with pain. but it also flashed with an inexplicable joy. He used her thoroughly. He even asked her to be loyal to him in the past few days of loving each other. What right did he have? He was just relying on her love for him. Now she didn't love him anymore. She was going to be engaged to another man. She didn't want to be manipulated by him anymore. She didn't need to look at his face anymore. She didn't need to see him act in front of her anymore. After the joy of revenge passed, her heart felt empty again. It was as if she had stepped on empty air and couldn't step on anything solid. Perhaps it was because of her cooperation, or perhaps it was because she had already accepted her fate at this point. But Wu Liqian was happy. He pulled her around the mausoleum to show off. This underground mausoleum was very big. There were many forks in the road, like a spider's web. It was easy to get lost if you weren't careful. There were many coffins in the side halls of the mausoleum, but there were no corpses in them, only countless weapons. What was even rarer was that there wasn't even a trace of the unique smell of corpses in the mausoleum. Other than being a little darker and not seeing the light of day, it was not much different from a normal military camp. Jiyu even saw a spacious side hall filled with food, vegetables, and fruits. It could be considered a grain storage. Of course, this place was heavily guarded. If Wu Liqian hadn't brought her here, she wouldn't have been able to reach this side hall. Jiyu grew up in the palace, so she didn't know anything about military matters. But after walking around, a ball of doubt rose in her heart. The things in this mausoleum were too complete. Armory, grain storage, everything was available here. There were even many important paths with powerful mechanisms. Once an enemy invaded, these mechanisms would be activated, achieving the effect of one man guarding the pass and 10,000 unable to get through. How did this look like a mausoleum? It was more like a secret military stronghold. She also paid attention to the soldiers. These soldiers walked with vigor and looked very spirited. It didn't seem like they had been injured. More importantly, the armor on their bodies was bright and new. It did not look like they had suffered a defeat at all. Even their weapons were shiny, as if they had just been polished. Where did these weapons and armors come from? How did they manage to transport so much food? With Jun Liuya's iron-blooded military methods, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens to steal these things. The only possibility was that these things had been prepared here a long time ago. This mausoleum was probably not a real mausoleum, but a secret military fortress. Looking at the freshness of the armor and food, they seemed to be from within the last 1 or 2 years. Jiyu's limbs suddenly turned cold. He was afraid that this so-called mausoleum was not accidentally discovered by Wu Tianxi and his son. It should have been secretly built by them earlier. He was afraid that this father and son pair had long had the intention of rebelling. It was just that Jun Luyi had caught them off guard, and they hadn't had the chance to rebel. If that was the case, why would they save the Full Moon Emperor? They were probably more eager for the death of Full Moon Emperor than Jun Liuya. That way, they would only need to control her as a puppet and use her to summon the real old subordinates of Jiyu country. There was a wolf in front and a tiger behind. What should she do? Jiyu. Wu Liqian held her hand and asked suspiciously, "What are you thinking of?" Chapter 2562. Jiyu suddenly came back to her senses. The series of events had made this naive girl who couldn't hide anything now know how to hide her emotions. Even if she saw through Wu Tianxi and his father's true colors, she couldn't expose them now. She pursed her lips. "I'm thinking about my father and mother. If they see everything you've prepared, I'm afraid they'll be very happy. Unfortunately, they won't know for now." She pretended to brush her hair and pulled her hand out. A complicated look flashed through Wu Liqian's eyes. He patted Jiyu's shoulder. "That's true. Don't worry, we'll try to save them." Jiyu shook her head. "I can't be at ease. If Jun Liuya finds out that I came with you, he'll be angry and do something to my parents." Wu Liqian comforted her. "Don't worry, he won't find out. Sai's disguise is the best in the world. No matter who she pretends to be, there won't be any mistakes. I've already sent people to investigate." After Tsai went back with the guards, there was no movement from the palace. This morning, our people saw them walking hand in hand in the palace garden. They were very loving. Jiyu was speechless. Her heart felt like it had been stabbed by a knife. She paused for a moment. When she was by Jun Liuya's side, he wouldn't let her go every night. Then last night, did he and Sai? He should have. Otherwise, if he saw through her disguise, why would he be willing to travel with her this morning? However, it was fortunate that he didn't recognize her. If he did, he would know that she had escaped. Then her parents strange. Jun Liuya was so smart that he couldn't tell the difference between the person sleeping next to him and the fake. Or was Wu Liqian comforting her? Jiyu's heart burned. For a moment, she didn't know whether she wanted the news to be true or not. She stood there in a daze. Jiyu, don't worry. As long as Jun Liuya can't see through Tsai's disguise, he won't be on guard against her, especially in bed. Tsai's skills in this area are top-notch. She can make a man want to die. She'll often make a move at the most ecstatic moment and give a fatal blow. As long as Jun Liuya is dead, the Huiyue Kingdom's army will crumble on its own. Then we can attack back into the city and restore the Jiyue Kingdom. Wu Liqian sketched out a beautiful blueprint for Jiyu's future. Jiyu's face was extremely pale. She said stiffly, I'm sleepy. I want to rest. Wu Liqian choked and looked at her face. His eyes darkened and he sighed. Okay, I'll take you to rest. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. Nothing happened during these 2 days. There was no movement in the Purple Moon City. Perhaps Kai Yi's camouflage technique was so brilliant that she had deceived everyone there. That was why it was so peaceful. Jiyu was also very calm these 2 days. She was either reading or practicing calligraphy in her room every day. However, every day when she saw Wu Tianxi and his son, she would ask when they would take action to save her parents. Wu Tianxi and his son easily fooled her and asked her to wait in peace. She obediently agreed. This made Wu Tianxi and his son very gratified. Naturally, they loosened their guard on her. As a princess who grew up in the hands of her parents, who could she count on at this time? They could only count on them. Naturally, she wouldn't run away. Besides, there were mechanisms everywhere in the mausoleum. Every night, the mechanisms in the mausoleum would be activated. Only Wu Tianxi and his son, as well as some trusted soldiers and patrolling soldiers on duty, knew how to avoid it. Even if a little princess like Jiyu wanted to escape, she couldn't escape from the mausoleum. Therefore, every night, Jiyu would only have a little maid who wasn't very good at martial arts to serve her. And this was what Jiyu wanted. Chapter 2563. The tunnel was long and deep, and the everlasting lamps on both sides were swaying. Jiyu was wearing a soldier's uniform and was walking quickly in the tunnel. Password. A group of patrolling soldiers appeared from the darkness and shouted, Purple moon rises from the east. Jiyu answered in a low voice. The patrol didn't doubt her and stepped aside to make way for her. Jiyu didn't even look back as she strode forward. She turned into one tunnel, then another. Along the way, she met 4 or 5 patrol teams, but because she said the right password, she passed through safely. Jiyu was originally a person with no sense of direction, and it was easy for her to get lost. But the successive disasters made the once carefree and innocent princess grow up quickly. The mausoleum had such a complicated path, but she had memorized it in just 2 days. She even figured out the mechanisms inside, and after passing through several secret passages, she didn't touch any of them. Finally, she approached the entrance of the mausoleum. There was a tall and sturdy man guarding there. When he saw Jiyu hurrying over, he frowned and said, Password. Jiyu said the password and thought that the man would leave without saying a word. But she didn't expect him to reach out his big hand and said, Token. Jiyu paused for a moment. For the first time, she knew that she needed a token to get out of the mausoleum. She didn't hesitate and put her hand in her sleeve and said slowly, The token is here. Before the last word was finished, a cold light flashed and stabbed toward the man's forehead. This move was as fast as lightning, and the angle was very strange. The man was caught off guard and was hit by her. Chi. The short sword entered the man's brain. The man groaned, and his huge body fell down. Jiyu gritted her teeth and supported him, so that he wouldn't disturb the others. Then, she dragged his body to a hidden corner, and flew out of the only exit of the mausoleum. Her heart was beating fast. Her slender hand was still stained with the man's blood, but the hand holding the sword was very stable and didn't tremble at all. The purple moon was high in the sky outside, and the wind in the dense forest was soft, bringing the fragrance of the plants, which seeped into her heart. Jiyu hadn't seen the sun for a few days. She stood at the entrance of the cave and couldn't help but take a deep breath. Taking in a breath of fresh air, it was as if her lungs, which had been curled up all this time, had opened up. She didn't dare to stay at the entrance of the cave for too long. After exiting the cave, she immediately flew into the dense forest. Only by escaping into the vast mountains would she have any hope of obtaining true freedom. Now she was only one step away from freedom. She had just entered the dense forest when her feet suddenly stopped and her entire body froze. A man walked out from behind a large tree. He was tall and slender, with sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes. His black clothes almost blended in with the surrounding darkness. Wu Liqian, Little General Wu. His black eyes were heavy as he looked at Jiyu from head to toe. Finally, his gaze landed on her small blood-stained hand, and he sighed softly. Jiyu, you didn't even dare to kill a rabbit. But now, you killed a person without even blinking. Jiyu lowered her eyes and said faintly, people change. Suffering had forced her to grow up. Her clear gaze landed on him. You guys are the same. Wu Liqian sighed. Jiyu, I haven't changed at all. Jiyu smiled softly. She didn't know if it was mockery or sarcasm, but she didn't say anything. The childhood sweetheart who used to listen to her and protected her like a pearl was now full of schemes against her. How could he say that he hadn't changed? Chapter 2564. Fake. Just like Junlioya, he is also a fake. It is all for power and the so-called ambition. Love cannot withstand a single blow in front of these. Wu Liqian seemed to be pierced by her gaze. Jiyu, where do you want to escape to? Jiyu still did not speak. Wu Liqian looked at her for a moment and his handsome face turned cold. You want to find Junlioya, don't you? You can't forget him at all. Have you forgotten that he is your enemy who destroyed your country? Don't you know that he is only using you? Jiyu pursed her lips and suddenly sneered. Wu Liqian, don't tell me that you are not only using me? How are you better than him? Wu Liqian choked and looked at her with a complicated gaze. After a long time, he sighed and said softly, Jiyu, I don't know about others, but I am sincere to you. I really like you. I admit that my father has long had the intention to rebel, but I never wanted to hurt you. Jiyu, you probably think that the reason why we let you stay is to hold the emperor, and not for your own good. But have you ever thought that I have Kai in my hands? If I just want a puppet to command the world, I can let Kai dress up as you to achieve all our goals. But I don't want to do that. I am worried about you, so I persuaded my father to make this plan, and take the risk to use Kai to replace you to save you. Jiyu, do you still think that I am purely using you? Jiyu's eyelashes drooped and she smiled faintly. Wu Liqian, do you think I am stupid? You use Kai to replace me not just to save me, but to let Kai use my identity to assassinate Junlioya. Only by killing him can you have the hope of dominating the world, right? But have you ever thought that once Kai kills Junlioya, will my father and mother still have a way to live? Although Junlioya was using her, he had temporarily spared her parents' lives. Once he was assassinated, his subordinates would definitely retaliate. The first thing they would do was to kill the Yuanyu emperor and his wife. Jiyu had thought about this point clearly enough. Wu Liqian was stunned. He didn't expect that Jiyu could think through such a complicated matter so thoroughly. She was no longer the innocent little princess who didn't know the sorrows of the world. So you're saying that you ran away this time to find Junlioya and continue to be his woman in exchange for your parents' temporary safety? Wu Liqian's expression didn't look too good. Jiyu pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Wu Liqian didn't tell her where she really wanted to go, but there was no need for her to let him know, however. Wu Liqian took her silence as a tacit agreement, and his eyes turned cold. Let's go, I'll take you to a place. Jiyu didn't expect that Wu Liqian would actually bring her into the city, Purple Moon City. Of course, both of them had disguised themselves before going there. Wu Liqian's disguise skills were actually not inferior to Junlioya's. He used some utensils and props to rub and pinch Jiyu's face. In less than an hour, Jiyu had become a completely different person. She had an ordinary, pockmarked face, and was dressed in coarse clothes. She looked exactly like a village woman. Wu Liqian himself had also disguised himself as a village man with a dark complexion. When he stood next to Jiyu, they looked like a pair. The full moon hung in the sky, as big as a jade plate. It hung there, shining down on the crowd below. When Jiyu entered the city, she found out that today was the autumn moon festival of Jiyu country. Every house was decorated with lanterns and streamers, and the streets were filled with people. It was very lively. Chapter 2565. Jiyu's footsteps were heavy. In the past, her father would lead the civil and military officials to the inner city gates to offer sacrifices to the heavens. Of course, he would also enjoy the festivities with the people. After the sacrifice, he would also bring her and her mother to the meteor tower to admire the moon. The family would be happy and harmonious. But now that her parents were prisoners, her life was also like duckweed. The people were still as happy as before, but the people in power on the city gate tower had changed. Jiyu was now like the rest of the people, crowding under the city gate tower and looking up at the people on the city gate tower. The city gate tower was very tall, and there were dozens of palace lanterns hanging on it. The city gate tower was brightly lit, and people could faintly see the people on it. After 4 days, Jiyu finally saw Jun Liuya again. As usual, Jun Liuya's face was completely covered by a silver ghost mask. His purple robes were overflowing with colors under the moonlight. Standing beside him was the daughter of the Wuxia country's prime minister, Hong Xiang. Behind them were his subordinates, and a few respected elders in the city. Jiyu finally saw Tsai. It could also be said that she saw another version of herself. When they met last time, Tsai only looked like her, but now she looked 10% like her. She stood slightly behind Jun Liuya with her eyes slightly lowered, and her mouth slightly pursed. Even her expression was no different from Jiyu's usual. No wonder Wu Liqian was so confident in Tsai. She actually had this kind of ability. Jiyu almost suspected that if she returned to her original appearance and stood beside Tsai, then held hands and spun around twice, no one would be able to tell them apart. Even twins wouldn't look so similar. No wonder Jun Liuya couldn't tell them apart. No wonder he could pretend that Tsai was her and keep her by his side. Jiyu stood there and forced herself to ignore the bitterness in her heart. She looked at the 3 people. Hong Xiang was standing side by side with him, which meant that the ceremony should be completed by him and Hong Xiang. And at this time, the ceremony should be held by the emperor and empress. He was finally willing to admit that Hong Xiang was his future wife in front of the world. Jiyu, who represented Kai Yi, was also standing behind him. So he wanted to give Jiyu the status of a concubine? Haha, it seemed that Tsai was quite resourceful. She had only been by his side for 4 days, but she had risen from a bed slave to a concubine. Jiyu, did you see that? He didn't recognize Kai Yi. He treated her the same way he treated you. Wu Liqian stood next to Jiyu and quietly stabbed her in the heart. Jiyu didn't speak. She didn't speak easily now. The girl who used to be as lively as a lark was now as silent as a rock. However, his true sweetheart is Hong Xiang. I heard that she's the only daughter of Prime Minister Xiao of the Wuxia Kingdom, and that she's Jun Liuya's childhood sweetheart. Everyone in the Wuxia Kingdom knows that Hong Xiang likes Jun Liuya, and Prime Minister Xiao has the intention of betrothing Hong Xiang to Jun Liuya. However, the Emperor of the Wuxia Kingdom has yet to issue an imperial edict. Wu Liqian continued to talk about the juicy news he'd obtained. As he spoke, he observed Jiyu's expression. Unfortunately, the city gate tower was dimly lit, and she was in disguise, so he couldn't see her expression at all. She didn't even change her standing posture. Jiyu, you don't believe what I've said? Wu Liqian didn't give up. I believe. Jiyu finally spat out 2 words. Her tone was calm. I've known this for a long time. Chapter 2566. You already know, but you're still so devoted to him? Wu Liqian blurted out. Jiyu's small face was hidden in the shadows, so people couldn't see her expression. I just can't let go of my parents. She used to treat this love as her everything, throwing herself into it like a moth to a flame. Now, she suddenly understood that there was nothing in this world that couldn't be let go, including love. She was clearly standing in a crowd, surrounded by laughter, but Jiyu felt a bone-piercing loneliness. Some of her acupuncture points had been sealed, so she could only walk and stop like a normal person. But she couldn't get rid of Wu Liqian. She could only talk normally and couldn't even shout. She had tried to use the crowd around her to escape, but Wu Liqian seemed to have seen through her thoughts and held her hand tightly without letting go. Husband, look at how loving this young couple is, holding hands the entire time. Good, your husband will also hold your hand. Jiyu's lips twitched when she heard the young couple talking behind her. Loving? How could she and Wu Liqian be loving? 8 bells suddenly rang from the tower, indicating that the ceremony was about to officially begin. The people below cheered thunderously. Let's go, Jiyu said. Everything in front of her was very glaring to her, so she didn't want to see it anymore. Wu Liqian didn't force her this time. The two squeezed out of the crowd, leaving the laughter behind. Because most people ran to the tower to watch the ceremony, there were fewer people in other places. The two strolled along the main street. Time slipped away unknowingly, and the tower began to light up with fireworks. Red, purple, fiery trees and silver flowers bloomed in the sky, attracting everyone's attention. Jiyu didn't have any interest in looking back. Jiyu, where do you want to go? Wu Liqian asked her. Didn't you want to take me back? It's fine now, Jiyu coldly said. Since she couldn't get rid of him, she could only accept her fate and think of a way in the future. Wu Liqian looked at her small face and suddenly sighed. Jiyu, I will try to send a message to Tsai and have her postpone her plan to assassinate Jun Luyi. It won't be too late to do it, after saving your father and mother. Jiyu suddenly stopped, and her dim eyes lit up. Really? Then he laughed coldly. You don't need to coax me. I'm afraid you and your father can't wait for my parents to die. Wu Liqian froze. Back then, he and his father had indeed planned to do so. But now, he didn't want Jiyu to feel despair again. She had suffered enough blows, and every blow was cruel to a man, not to mention Jiyu who had grown up in a honey pot. She was already strong enough to not break down until now. Jiyu, I'll convince my father to save your parents first. At most, I'll put them under house arrest for the rest of their lives, but I won't harm their lives. Wu Liqian finally spoke the truth in his heart. Jiyu's heart, which had been submerged in ice water, suddenly had a glimmer of hope because of his words. Now that things had come to this, she had no intention of reviving her country. That was just a fool's dream. She didn't ask for much. She just wanted her parents to be well and live a peaceful life. But could Wu Liqian's words be trusted? After being tricked so many times, Jiyu no longer believed anyone. No matter what she heard, she would discount it in her heart. Chapter 2567. Wu Liqian could guess what she was worried about at the moment. His blood was boiling. He raised his left hand and pointed his thumb at the moon in the sky. He said solemnly, I solemnly swear that I will save the Yuanyue emperor and his wife first before I do anything else. If I violate this oath, may I be struck by lightning. Jiyu was shocked. The oath made to the moon on the night of the full moon in Jiyu was the heaviest. No one would violate it. Otherwise, there would be a risk of breaking the oath. Wu Liqian was serious. Jiyu's eyes finally lit up, as if she finally saw a glimmer of starlight after walking in the dark for a long time. However, Jiyu, saving His Majesty is indeed very risky. We need to think about it carefully. I can't guarantee that I can save His Majesty, but I will try my best. Wu Liqian stared at Jiyu's eyes and said seriously. Jiyu nodded slightly. She also knew that it was very difficult, but there was still hope. Kai was not exposed, so everything was normal in the city. Wu Liqian also relaxed his vigilance. In order to make Jiyu happy, he proposed to find an inn in the city to rest for the night, before going back. Behind them, the people who were watching the fun in the city tower came back. They were discussing the grand ceremony of the heaven worship ceremony, and they were all excited. The capital was covered with crowns, and the people were all haggard. Ji didn't want to see this, nor did she want to hear this. She was about to take a few steps to avoid them, but a child's words directly stopped her in her tracks. Mother, are we going to kill the emperor tomorrow? I want to see it. I want to see it. Children shouldn't watch such bloody things. How about I take you to ride a horse tomorrow? No, I want to watch the emperor being killed. But that's not suitable for children. Wife, Xiaobao is a boy after all. He needs to train his courage, so that he can grow up to be a man in the future. Besides, killing the emperor is not something that you can see all the time. Yes, mother, I want to be a man. Become a man. Okay, you two can watch it tomorrow. I don't want to watch it. It's so bloody that I'm afraid of nightmares. It was like thunder. Jiyu's whole body was frozen. She almost thought that she was hallucinating. She slowly turned around and opened her mouth to ask something, but she found that her mind was blank. Wu Liqian's reaction was faster. He stopped the family who were talking and laughing and interrupted. Tomorrow? Which emperor? Of course it's the captured full moon emperor. Who else could it be? Brother, didn't you hear the emperor's announcement just now? The man from the family of 3 asked in surprise. We thought it was too crowded inside, so we came out long ago. Brother, you must have heard the whole story. Tell us about it. Wu Liqian was an expert at getting information out of people. He quickly started a conversation with the family. In just a few words, he had already figured out the ins and outs of the whole matter. As it turned out, the one presiding over the ceremony was not Jun Liuya, but Jun Lufeng and Hong Xiang. This was because Jun Lufeng had already been appointed as the city lord of Ziyue City by the Huiyue Kingdom's king, while Jun Liuya was still the commander of the 3 armies. There were no other promotions, and it was rumored that he would be leading his troops back to the kingdom soon. As for Hong Xiang, she was the daughter of the prime minister, and could be considered the most honorable woman here. She was suitable to be a helper. After the ceremony, Jun Liuya came up with Cai and announced in public that in order to appease the anger of the people and to comply with the way of heaven, Emperor Yuan Yu and his wife would be beheaded at Xian Yuan stage at noon the next day. Chapter 2568. At that time, all the people could go and watch. This news was like a bomb, causing the people below to be in an uproar. After the ceremony, people were still talking in 2s and 3s. The husband of the family of 3 was very talkative and told all the news he knew. Princess Jiyu also agreed to kill Yuan Yu Emperor? Jiyu, who had been silent all this time, asked dryly. Her voice was very dry and hoarse. I heard that Princess Jiyu has no choice now, right? She has also become 3rd Prince Jun's woman, so she can only choose to put righteousness before family. When the announcement was made on the gate tower, Princess Jiyu didn't say anything, but she nodded. Jiyu. The family of 3 finished gossiping and laughed. In fact, it was not only this family of 3 who were talking about this matter on the street. Other people were also talking in 2s and 3s. Their saliva was flying everywhere, as if they were talking about interesting gossip. Wu Liqian pulled Jiyu, who was as stiff as a stick, and walked forward. Let's go back first. Jiyu felt like she was stepping on cotton. She staggered a few steps and knelt on the ground once. Fortunately, Wu Liqian had been holding her arm. Otherwise she would have been lying on the ground directly. Her knee was also injured. Her hand was as cold as ice, and her whole body was sluggish. Wu Liqian said a few words to her, but she didn't react. Wu Liqian was also afraid of attracting attention, so he simply pulled her and walked quickly. Don't worry, we will go back and think of a way. Jiyu suddenly stopped. She used a lot of strength, and Wu Liqian was not prepared for it, so he almost staggered. Jiyu? Jiyu's hands and feet were trembling, and she said word by word. I don't believe it. I don't believe that he would do this to me. I will go and ask him myself. I'm going to fight it out with him. She turned around and ran back in the direction of the city gate tower. Suddenly, the back of her head became numb, and her head became dizzy, and she fell down. Wu Liqian had no choice but to knock her out and held her in his arms. She was as light as a feather, as if she could be blown away by the wind. Jiyu, I am sorry, let's go back first. We will talk when we go back. Wu Liqian carried her and walked away. He wanted to take her out of the city, but because it was late at night and the gate was closed, he couldn't silently jump over the tall city wall with a person in his arms, so he could only turn back. The sun was shining brightly, illuminating the entire earth. Xianyuantai, a very grand place, is actually the place where Jiyu country executes ministers who have committed crimes. Every time a minister broke the law or angered the emperor would just casually say, "Push him out and behead him." These ministers would be pushed here to be beheaded in public. This used to be the place where the majesty of the royal family was established. It was also the place where the ministers trembled with fear. In the past, when the ministers were executed, the royal family would gather the civil and military officials, as well as the common people to watch. If it was a major case, the full moon emperor would even personally supervise the execution on the stage. The execution of an emperor was a once-in-a-century event. The entire Purple Moon City was in an uproar. It was not noon yet, but there were already many people gathered under the Xianyuan stage. As far as the eye could see, it was densely packed with people. It was the beginning of autumn. The weather was still hot, and the sun was scorching. Everyone was drenched in sweat and stretched their necks to look into the distance. Time ticked by, and at 9:30 in the morning, the crowd in the distance suddenly surged. The shouts of soldiers could be heard. Chapter 2569. The shouts of soldiers could be heard as a group of brightly armored soldiers cleared the way. In the middle, they were escorting 2 carriages of prisoners. Wherever they went, the people automatically parted like a tide. The crowd suddenly cheered, "Jun Shuai! Jun Shuai!" The cheers were like waves, shaking the heavens and earth. No matter what era it was, people always worshipped heroes, not to mention Jun Liuya, the famous war god of the entire continent. He also had the ability to win people's hearts. In just a short month, he had already won the hearts of the people of Jiyu. Everyone worshipped him like a god. But now, he was riding a tall horse alongside the 8th prince, Jun Lufeng. He was still wearing that iconic devil mask, looking awe-inspiring. His whole body was emitting a kind of cold aura that kept people away. Behind him were the 2 wooden caged prison wagons, each of which had a person locked inside. Although the person in front had disheveled hair, he was wearing the Jiyu country's monarch's court robes. He must be the monarch of Jiyu country, Yuanyu Emperor. In the prison carriage behind him was a middle-aged woman. Although her hair was neat, her head was lowered, making it hard for people to see her face. There was no need to ask. This was the Empress of Jiyu country. Such a group of people was naturally very eye-catching. The moment the crowd saw the prison carriages, it was silent at first, then it boiled over like adding oil to a raging fire. Perhaps it was to achieve the goal of the parade. The group moved very slowly passing through the crowd. Jiyu was mixed in the crowd, watching all of this with wide eyes. In front and behind her were the Wu family's experts in disguise. Of course, Wu Liqian was also by her side. In such hot weather, everyone else was sweating profusely, but Jiyu's face did not have a single drop of sweat. Her hands were even cold the entire time. "Jiyu, I've already discussed this with father. Let's see if this is Jun Liuya's plan to lure the enemy. If it's true, we'll try to save your parents." "How? Raid the execution ground?" "Jun Liuya caught us off guard, so this is the only way now. What are the chances of success?" "There's a 20 to 30% chance. I'll go too." "Jiyu, I think it's best if you wait outside. There's no need to go in." "No, I must go. No one can stop me. If you try to stop me, you'll have to kill me." "All right, I'll take you there. However, when you get there, you must listen to my orders and not act rashly. Otherwise, if our identities are exposed, we will all die without a burial ground." "All right." This was the conversation between Jiyu and Wu Liqian when she woke up in an unknown in this morning. She had originally wanted to take things slowly to save her parents, but Jun Liuya's move had disrupted all her plans. She could only stake it all on one throw. She couldn't watch her parents die. Even if she had to risk her life, she had to save them. Besides, deep in her heart, she didn't believe that Jun Liuya would be so heartless as to kill her parents in front of so many people. He clearly promised to spare her parents' lives. Although she had escaped, Caillou was still pretending to be her and staying by his side. He didn't see it, so how could he miss the appointment? How could he go back on his words? Ever since she woke up, her chest felt like it was stuffed with a ball of fire or a block of ice. His head was buzzing, and his mind was often blank. Chapter 2570. Her head was buzzing and her mind was often blank, but there was only one thought in her mind. No matter what, she had to save her parents. If she couldn't save them, she would rather be buried with them. Raiding the execution ground was easy to say, but the chances of success under the watchful eyes of this Azura war god were minuscule. If it really didn't work, she would rush out and reveal her identity. But would Jun Liuya give her face? He was only using her. He even spared her parents' lives, so that he could make better use of them. Then, was this so-called execution of the emperor a trap to lure Jiyu's former subordinates outside the city to raid the execution ground? Wuxian had also analyzed this to her, saying that this was most likely a trap that wanted to catch all of them in one fell swoop. If this was a trap, if they didn't show up and fall for it, her parents wouldn't really be killed. Thus, Wuxian repeatedly reminded Jiyu to stay calm and not act rashly before coming. To be on the safe side, he sealed Jiyu's mute acupoint and some of her acupoints so that she could walk freely, but she couldn't use her martial arts. This was to prevent her from rushing out in a fit of anger. At this moment, they had all changed their appearances and blended into the crowd like ordinary people, not revealing anything. Jiyu was also trying her best to calm herself down. Wuxian kept holding her hand to prevent her from getting lost. The other experts naturally fanned out around her, protecting her closely. When the group of people arrived with the prisoner carriage, Jiyu's eyes widened. She was quite far away, but she could clearly see the people in the carriage. It really was her imperial father and imperial mother. Looking at their figures and the side of their faces that appeared and disappeared, it was all the same. Although she had mentally prepared herself, when she really saw them, the impact on Jiyu wasn't small. Her parents had always lived a life of luxury. When had they ever suffered like this? She couldn't help but take 2 steps forward, but she was pulled back by Wuxian. She suddenly turned back, and Wuxian shook his head at her, indicating for her to calm down. Jiyu took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. Her gaze fell on Jun Liuya in front of her, and her eyes were almost bloodshot. This person played with her feelings in the palm of his hand. Not only did he cause the destruction of her country, he even wanted to kill her. Could it be that men who play politics are all so ruthless? What was love in his heart? What was she to him? Not even a single strand of straw would be of any weight. Her eyes stared straight at Jun Liuya, who was slowly moving through the crowd on a tall horse. Her eyes were filled with undisguised hatred. There were too many onlookers, and it was crowded. From time to time, there were impatient people squeezing in and out of the crowd. A burly man almost bumped into Jiyu in the process of squeezing. Fortunately, Wuxian blocked him in time. The other experts also quietly squeezed over, forming an invisible human wall around Jiyu, preventing others from approaching. Jiyu didn't notice this. Her eyes were only on the prison carriage. She wanted to break open the wooden cage, save her parents, and then run away. The group of people finally arrived at Xianyuan stage. The prison carriage was opened on the stage, and 2 soldiers roughly dragged the prisoners out of the carriage. Ignoring their struggles, they forced them to kneel on the ground. The 2 brothers, Jun Liuya and Jun Lufeng, as well as another official who didn't seem to have a low position, were surrounded by guards as they sat on the execution platform. Chapter 2571. Sir Xing, can we begin? Jun Lufeng asked the official beside him. The official smiled. Your Highnesses can make the decision. I dare not overstep my boundaries. Sir Xing is an imperial envoy. You should be in charge of the execution. Jun Lufeng smiled. Sir Xing cupped his hands and said, Your Highness is too polite. I have the Emperor's orders. Please don't blame me. His polite words were directed at Jun Liuye. At this moment, Jun Liuye gave the impression that he was a man of few words. He only said 2 words, "You're too polite." Jun Lufeng said, "Sir Xing, please examine the prisoners." Sir Xing said a few more polite words, and then walked down the stage. Behind the couple stood 2 executioners. When Sir Xing came down, one of the executioners pulled the prisoners' hair and forced them to raise their heads. Sir Xing looked at the faces of the 2 criminals and nodded slightly. He then walked back to the execution platform and cupped his hands towards the Jun brothers. "Many thanks for your cooperation, Your Highnesses. This lowly official has verified that there is no mistake. This lowly official will report this to His Majesty after returning to the capital. Killing this fatuous ruler will be a great merit to both Your Highnesses." Although the voices on the stage were not loud, Jiyu and the others were martial arts masters. They had sharp ears and eyes. Their attention was also on the stage, so they naturally heard the conversation clearly. Wu Liqian's expression changed slightly. It turned out that it was not Jun Liuye's idea to kill the emperor of the Full Moon Kingdom. It was an imperial edict from the emperor of the Huiyue Kingdom. This imperial envoy came specifically for this. If that was the case, then this was not a trap. It was real. They were really going to kill the emperor of the Full Moon Kingdom in front of everyone. He secretly looked around. There were many soldiers of the Huiyue Kingdom around the Zhuanyuantai. There were at least a few thousand people. The security was very tight. With only a few hundred people, it was impossible for them to break into the execution stage. The emperor of the Full Moon Kingdom could not be saved. He could not help but look at Jiyu. His first thought was to take her away and not let her see this cruel scene. However, the words that his father Wu Tianxi had secretly instructed him last night appeared in his ears again. Wu Tianxi told him that Jiyu had not truly given up on Jun Liuye. So if Jun Liuye really wanted to kill Yuanyu Emperor and his wife, he should not stop Jiyu from watching. Only when she saw everything with her own eyes would she truly hate Wu Liqian to the bone. Only then would she truly become their puppet. Only then would he, Wu Liqian, be able to fulfill his wish and bring the beauty home. Wu Liqian also understood that his father was right. But how cruel was it to let an inexperienced little girl witness all of this? He hesitated for a moment. Jiyu also saw the imperial envoy and heard their conversation on the stage. Naturally, she also understood the sequence of events. Her fingers instantly turned cold. Even the imperial envoys were here. It seemed like the execution this time was real. But back then, Jun Liuye had clearly said that he could protect her parents from dying. He clearly said it. Was he really going to break his promise? He was such a powerful person. If he really wanted to keep the 2 of them alive, he should have a way, right? Unless he didn't want to protect himself at all. Or perhaps it was because of that Kai Yi. That's right. Wu Tianxi was looking forward to her parents' death. Kai Yi was also one of his people. Perhaps Kai Yi had pretended to be her and purposely whispered into Jun Liuye's ear, saying that he could put righteousness before family or something. So Jun Liuye had no scruples. Chapter 2572. Her heart was in a whirlwind, and her heart was in her throat, as if it was going to jump out of her mouth. She clenched her fists tightly, her fingertips as pale as snow. The imperial envoy on the stage had already begun to read out Emperor Yuanyu's crimes. The list was quite long, as if Emperor Yuanyu had committed countless crimes. However, Jiyu did not hear a single one. She looked at Wu Liqian with fiery eyes. Although she could not speak, her meaning was clear. She was asking when they would take action. After the list of crimes was read out, her parents' heads would fall to the ground. She could not wait any longer. Wu Liqian naturally understood what she meant. He looked away and said, "Wait a little longer." Wait a little longer? Their heads would fall to the ground if they waited any longer. Jiyu's eyes were bloodshot. Others could ignore this matter, but she could not. The ones kneeling on the stage were her parents. She began to struggle, signaling Wu Liqian to unseal her acupoints. Wu Liqian naturally refused and held her hand tightly. "Jiyu, don't be rash. Let's wait and see." Wait and see? What kind of miracle could she see? Could she still hope that Jun Liuya would suddenly be merciful and let them go despite his imperial father's imperial edict? Perhaps she could only fight for her parents' lives if she rushed out herself. Let go of me. She could not speak, so she could only yell with her mouth. Seeing that noon was approaching, Jiyu could no longer hold it in. Jiyu, calm down. Perhaps this is their plan. We can't expose ourselves. You can't expose yourself either. Wu Liqian transmitted his voice to her and held her hands at the same time to prevent her from struggling too much. I want to go out. Maybe if I go out and beg him, he'll let them go. Jiyu desperately mouthed her thoughts. Her eyes were completely red. Jiyu, don't be naive. Jun Liuya is not someone who would change his mind for a woman. He only wants to use you. Wu Liqian cruelly shattered her hopes. No, he won't. He promised me. Jiyu could no longer care about anything else. Wu Liqian could still read lips. He looked at the stage and saw that the imperial envoy was about to finish reading out the sentence. Jun Liuya had been sitting there calmly without any movement. He did not even look down at the stage. Jiyu, you're still so stubborn even now? He had long wanted to kill your parents. The reason why he left them alive today was probably to keep a bargaining chip with his imperial father. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if he does have some feelings for you, at most, he won't do anything to you. But he won't publicly disobey the imperial edict for the sake of a fallen emperor like your father. Then are you going to save them or not? Jiyu's lips were trembling. Wu Liqian paused and didn't say anything for a moment. If they tried to invade the execution ground now, they would only end up dead. Jiyu, we will avenge your parents in the future. Wu Liqian looked away, not daring to look into her fiery eyes. Jiyu took a step back, her mind blank. Her path was cut off, and her heart was filled with endless gloom. No one helped her. No one could really help her save people. There was no one around. Why did this happen? She had only fallen in love, but in the end, she had sacrificed her country and her parents' lives. She was a sinner. She was the sinner of Jiyu country. She should be the one kneeling there to be beheaded. It shouldn't be her parents. She was the one who deserved to die. Her fingertips were trembling, and her vision was turning black. Chapter 2573. Wu Liqian would not make a move at this time. The only one who could save her parents was herself. She closed her eyes and began to attack the sealed acupoints with all her might. When Jun Liuya was with her, he had once taught her a bit of self-unsealing acupoints. Although there were many people present, most of them were listening to the imperial envoy's announcement, so the noise below was not loud. However, the imperial envoy's voice was like a demon's voice. How could Jiyu calm down under such circumstances? There were a few times when she almost went into a fork in the road, causing her blood vessels to hurt and the taste of blood to spread in her throat. However, she could not care less and continued to desperately unseal her acupoints. This kind of acupoint unsealing technique could not be seen from the outside. Wu Liqian thought that she had finally accepted her fate at this time and was slightly relieved. He still felt guilty and transmitted his voice to her. Jiyu, don't worry. I will help you take revenge. He simply pulled her into his arms and hugged her, intentionally or otherwise blocking Jiyu's view of the Xian Yuantai. He could not do anything else for her, but he could still block her from seeing the bloody scene that was about to happen. Jiyu's body trembled slightly, but she did not struggle, and was very obedient in his arms. Her face was disguised, so he could not see her expression. However, from her trembling body, he knew how much she was suffering in her heart. The guilt in his heart grew heavier and heavier. He hugged her and randomly promised her, Jiyu, don't worry. I will treat you better in the future. I will not let you suffer any more grievances. I will also treat you like a princess. I will not let you feel lonely. Don't be afraid. Jiyu still closed her eyes and turned a deaf ear to his words. Time was life. She could not waste a single second. She only hoped that time would slow down a little, just a little more, so that she could unseal her acupoints first. She wanted to rush up to the platform and expose Kai Yi's identity. She wanted to tell Jun Liuya that she was the real Jiyu. She would beg him to let her parents go. As long as he was willing to let them go, she was willing to do anything for him, even if it was as a slave or a servant. Holding on to this little bit of hope, she hit her acupoints with all her might. Perhaps it was due to her sincerity, or perhaps it was because she was originally intelligent, but the acupoints that Wu Liqian had sealed actually began to open up, and the flow of her inner energy gradually became lively. It was also at this time that the imperial envoy on the stage finally finished reading his long list of crimes. He paused and looked at the two princes beside him. "Your Highnesses, can we begin the execution?" The two princes looked at each other and were about to speak. Suddenly, a scream came from below the stage. "No! Show mercy!" That voice was extremely loud and sharp, suppressing the noise of the tens of thousands of people below. Everyone looked in that direction and saw a figure pouncing towards the stage. Wu Liqian never dreamed that Ji Yu would do this. He was originally holding her in his arms and thinking about how to continue comforting her. But he didn't expect that Ji Yu, who was in his arms, would suddenly hit his chest with her palm. He was caught off guard. His chest tightened and his arms loosened. Ji Yu took the opportunity to break free from his arms and let out a scream. She used all of her inner energy to shout, so it naturally shook the entire audience. Wu Liqian was the closest to her, so he was almost deafened by her scream. Of course, he immediately reacted and reflexively reached out to grab her as she jumped out. His martial arts were very high, although it could not compare to Jun Liuya. It was not something that Ji Yu could compare to. Otherwise, he would not have been able to catch her so easily. Chapter 2574. His martial arts were extremely high. Even though he couldn't compare to Jun Liuyi, he wasn't someone Ji Yu could compare to. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to catch her so easily. He had already made up his mind. After capturing Ji Yu, he would tell the others that his wife was a little crazy to dispel their wariness. Then he would bring her back. His plan was very good, and even his subordinates were very supportive. Almost at the same time when Ji Yu rushed out, those people also took action to stop her. He was confident that he would be able to subdue her in an instant without batting an eyelid. But while dreams were plentiful, reality was cruel. The accident happened in an instant. Just as he rushed towards Ji Yu, a black shadow flashed in front of his eyes. That black shadow hugged Ji Yu, who was about to jump onto the stage, and held her in his arms. Wu Liqian was shocked and subconsciously shouted, "Let go of my wife!" He rushed over. That black shadow hugged Ji Yu and spun around, causing Wu Liqian to pounce on empty air. That black shadow spun and avoided the obstruction of Wu Liqian and the other experts. Like lightning, he flew up to the stage and stood in the air. Wu Liqian finally saw the black shadow's true face and was stunned for a moment before he angrily shouted, Your Excellency is? My wife who just arrived." That person was tall and straight, but his face was ordinary. He was the type that couldn't be found in a crowd, but his eyes were very sharp. He coldly looked at Wu Liqian and said, "Your wife?" His voice was as cold as iron. Wu Liqian relied on the fact that he and Ji Yu were disguised, and no one would recognize them. He immediately said, "That's right. She is my wife who just got married a few days ago. Let go." Before he could finish his last word, he was interrupted by Ji Yu's voice. Her voice trembled as she said, "Jun Liuyi." Even though she didn't recognize his current face, she recognized the unique smell and aura on his body. She couldn't be wrong. He actually disguised himself and mixed in with the crowd. Then the Jun Liuyi on the stage was fake? Ji Yu's heart was beating wildly and her head was ringing. Her mouth was slightly open and she couldn't react. Jun Liuya hugged her so tightly that she was almost squeezed into his bones. Ji Yu almost couldn't breathe. She struggled and said, "Let go of me." Jun Liuya finally lowered his eyes to look at her. This gaze was like ice and snow, causing Ji Yu's heart to turn cold. All the blood in his body seemed to be frozen by his gaze. However, he didn't let go of her. Instead, he tightened his grip on her. Ji Yu's waist was about to be broken by him. The pain made him inhale sharply. However, she still heaved a sigh of relief. Although she was naive, she was still very smart. After thinking for a while, she came to a conclusion. This emperor-slaying operation was indeed a trap set up by Jun Liuye. She was afraid that he had already found out that Sai was a fake. In order to find her again, he deliberately spread the news that he wanted to kill her father and mother, forcing her to come here. Now that he had finally found her, this emperor-slaying operation should be over, right? No matter what, it was fine as long as her parents weren't killed. She didn't care about anything else. When she was at the peak of despair, hope suddenly appeared in her eyes. She didn't care about the pain from his grip on her waist. She grabbed his sleeve and said, "Jun Liuye, let my parents go." Her bright eyes were like fire as she stared at his face. It was as if she had caught the last straw in her life. Chapter 2575. She could not continue because her mute acupoint had been sealed once more, rendering her unable to utter a single word. Jun Liuye did not even lower his head to look at her. Instead, he looked down at Wu Liqian, whose expression had already changed. He chuckled and said, "Your wife?" His voice was light as a feather, but it hit a knife-sharp chill. Wu Liqian felt a chill in his heart. Before he could think of another excuse, his vision blurred, and a dazzling cold light flashed. A long sword circled around him like a swimming dragon. The sword came too quickly, and the angle was too tricky. Wu Liqian had never seen such a fast sword, or such a vicious sword move in his life. He did not even have time to pull out the dagger hidden in his sleeve, before he felt a sudden chill and pain on his neck. His vision turned black. This was the last thing he felt in this world. His body fell down, falling into the dust. His many subordinates did not even have time to save him. Ji Yu's eyes widened. From her angle, she could see where Wu Liqian's neck was struck by the sword. She could see the blood spurting out. She could see Wu Liqian, who had just been talking to her, fall into a pool of blood. The sudden conflict naturally caused the surrounding citizens to fall into chaos. They scattered in all directions, afraid of being implicated. Wu Liqian's subordinates also wanted to take the opportunity to escape with the chaotic crowd. However, they did not expect that the sound of weapons would be heard. Suddenly, dozens of plainclothed experts emerged from the crowd. These experts seemed to have already identified Wu Liqian's subordinates. In the midst of the chaos, they actually used their weapons to suppress them. Wu Liqian's subordinates were also dressed as commoners. They wanted to get away with it, so they did not dare to attack and could only cry out, "We're innocent." They were forced back to the center of the field by the plainclothed experts and separated from the surrounding citizens. There were more than 100 of them. They stood in the middle of the field, shouting that they were commoners and that they should not injure good people. They desperately pretended to be innocent. They had just witnessed Jun Liuye's demon-like attack and were almost scared out of their wits. In addition to the experts, the Wuxia Kingdom's soldiers also quietly surrounded them like an iron bucket. They could not escape, even if they fought with their lives on the line. They could only pretend to be commoners and try to get away with it. "My lord, there are a total of 112 rebels here. None of them were left out. Please deal with them, my lord," a general from the Wuxia Kingdom reported. Jun Liuye didn't even look at Ji Yu in his arms. His gaze swept across those people and only spat out 4 words: "Kill without mercy." These short words had decided the fate of these people and brought about a new round of slaughter. When Wu Liqian's subordinates saw that they couldn't get away with it, they naturally took out their weapons and began to fight with their lives. However, because they had to hide their identities, the weapons they had on them were all short blades. They couldn't use them well, and coupled with the fact that they were flustered, they were no match for those experts. These experts were all former members of the Dark Shadow Tower. It could be said that each one of them could fight against 1,000. When these people joined hands, it was as if they were chopping melons and vegetables. One by one, they felled Ji Yu, who was in Jun Liuye's arms, passively watched the massacre in front of her. She watched the blood splatter and the limbs dance in the air. Her heart kept sinking, as if there was a hand in the dark clutching her heart. It tightened inch by inch until she couldn't breathe and couldn't feel her own heartbeat. She wanted to open her mouth and shout, but her acupuncture points were sealed and she couldn't speak. She naturally didn't have any feelings for Wu Liqian's rebels, but they were still her former comrades. Chapter 2576. She didn't have any feelings for Wu Liqian's rebels, but they used to be her companions. They even bought food for her and fetched water for her this morning. When she was in the crowd just now, they blocked the crowd for her. Now, these lives fell one by one in front of her. Just like Wu Liqian, they became incomplete corpses. So this trap wasn't just a trap to lure her out, but also a trap to catch all the old subordinates of Jiyu. She and her parents were really just tools in his eyes. Her vision turned black, and her ears even buzzed a little. But a voice still clearly reached her ears. Jun Shuai, do you still want to execute the Emperor Yuan Yu couple? Jiyu recognized this voice. It was the Imperial Envoy's voice. Her heart instantly jumped. She almost stopped breathing. Now that the old subordinates of Jiyu were all dead, the Emperor Yuan Yu couple who acted as bait were useless. How would Jun Liuya deal with them? She struggled in his arms and opened her mouth. She wanted to plead for her parents, but she couldn't make a sound. Jun Liuya looked down at her in his arms, then said to the Imperial Envoy, "Carry it out as usual." The Imperial Envoy seemed to be relieved. He immediately turned around and threw the stick that represented life and death at the center of the execution field. He spat out one word, "Execute." One word shattered all of Jiyu's hope. One word shattered all of her will. In her wide eyes, she saw the executioner raise the bright knife high, and then with a swoosh bring it down. Crack, crack, two sounds that made one's teeth ache rang out. Two heads fell to the ground, and two mouthfuls of blood spurted out. Jiyu's sky was a crimson red of despair. The sky was a crimson red of despair. Ning Xuema's hand that was pressed against the ice coffin trembled. Shen Jiuli, who had been gently pressing down on her hand, raised his hand and quickly drew a line in the air with his fingertips. The blue light that came from the memory reading quickly disappeared. Ning Xuema woke up from her dream and opened her eyes. The blue ice cave was still the same as before. The ice coffin was also the same as before. The girl in the ice coffin was still sleeping, and Jun Liuya was still standing in front of it. Jiyu was in Shinjuli's arms. He was also holding her cold little hand. He sent his psychokinesis into her limbs and bones, quickly expelling the coldness from her body. "How are you?" Shinjuli only then did he speak when he saw that her face had regained its redness. Ning Xuema's whole body felt warm. She smiled at the great god. "I'm fine." Shinjuli did not say anything. He used his telekinesis to check her body again. After making sure that there was no blockage, he stopped and patted her on the shoulder. "Come on, let's have a go." Ning Xuema, the Almighty, he would occasionally treat her as his disciple. But this kind zest. Ning Xuema wanted to laugh, but her smile disappeared before it reached her lips. She thought of the little princess Jiyu's memories that she had just read. So tragic, so despairing. Her mood was even affected by Jiyu's memories. Her sharp gaze shot towards Jun Liuya, who was standing there with his sleeves down. She said coldly, "Jun Liuya, you keep saying that you love her. Is this how you love her? You killed her parents in front of her." All of this made her, an experienced assassin, terrified, let alone Jiyu, who used to be so naive and pure. Chapter 2577. Jun Liuya's face turned pale. He finally understood what Ning Xuema and the rest were reading. He closed his eyes and said, "Her parents weren't killed, but the substitutes I found." Ning Xuema raised her eyebrows. She was smart enough to understand Jun Liuya's plan. "So this is how you saved Emperor Yuan Yu and his wife. Using the strategy of substituting one person with another criminal who looks similar to Emperor Yuan Yu and his wife, and then beheading them in front of the imperial envoy sent by your father to give an explanation to the Huiyue kingdom?" Jun Liuya glanced at Ning Xuema and was surprised by her intelligence. She actually guessed it right. He nodded. "That's right. Back then, my position in the Huiyue kingdom was very delicate. Although my father appointed me as the general of the army, he was very afraid of me. There were a few times when the ministers in the court wanted to find trouble with me. They kept an eye on me, waiting for me to make a mistake. If I wanted to save Emperor Yuan Yu and his wife, I couldn't do it openly. I had to do it secretly. After I promised Ji Yu that day, I secretly sent my confidants to look for criminals who looked like Emperor Yuan Yu and his wife. But it wasn't easy. It took me more than a month to find them. Jun Liuye looked back at the ice coffin with pain in his eyes. She was naive and didn't have much experience. Her emotions were easily written on her face. Those who were observant could see the clues. At that time, there were spies sent by Imperial Father at my side. They were watching me and the people around me. They couldn't make the slightest mistake. This matter involved a lot of people. To prevent it from being leaked, I didn't tell her about this plan. I just prepared everything in secret. When Ning Xuemo read Ji Yu's memories, she could feel her emotions. She sighed softly when she thought of the helplessness and despair she felt when she was beside Jun Liuye. After she was kidnapped by Wu Liqian, when did you see through Cai's disguise? Ning Xuemo thought of another question. Jun Liuye's expression changed slightly. She was kidnapped by Wu Liqian? She didn't follow him of her own accord? Of course not. Her parents are still in your hands. Even if she doesn't consider you, she has to consider the safety of her parents. How can she leave with Wu Liqian? Ning Xuemo sneered. Jun Liuye's gaze turned to the ice coffin. Looking at Ji Yu inside, his eyes were filled with regret. I misunderstood her. His eyes and ears were all over the world, and he knew about the relationship between Wu Liqian and Ji Yu. He was Ji Yu's childhood sweetheart, and the two of them were very close. He couldn't be any nicer to Ji Yu. He was also Ji Yu's most trusted friend. Therefore, when he found out that the person who took Ji Yu away was Wu Liqian, he was filled with anger and jealousy. When did you see through Cai's identity? Ning Xuemo asked again. Jun Liuye's voice was cold. After she returned to the palace, she pretended to be Ji Yu and threw herself into my arms. I saw through her. Although Kai Yi's camouflage technique was very high, she could only deceive others. How could she deceive Jun Liuye, who was also an assassin? The killer's ability to recognize people was abnormally high. In this aspect, Jun Liuye was an expert among experts. What's more, he was very familiar with Ji Yu. He couldn't be fooled by a completely similar appearance. In other people's eyes, perhaps Kai Yi's camouflage was perfect, but in his eyes, Kai Yi was completely different from Ji Yu except for her appearance. She was full of flaws. Jun Liuye was the boss of the assassin world, so he naturally knew the other assassins like the back of his hand. Chapter 2578. He knew that Kai Yi was a faceless person, so when he realized that she wasn't Ji Yu, he immediately guessed her identity. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, he didn't reveal Kai Yi's disguise and only feigned civility. Of course, he didn't have any intimate contact with Kai Yi. He used the excuse that he was busy and put Kai Yi under house arrest in the palace. He called the shadow guard who followed Ji Yu that day. After asking about everything, his heart turned cold. He had already guessed that Ji Yu was replaced in the inn. With Ji Yu's ability, if she didn't want to, that person couldn't have taken her away. At this time, there weren't many people who could make Ji Yu trust, so he immediately thought of Wu Liqian. That day, he went to the inn to investigate. He found the secret passageway and found some clues inside, which confirmed his initial conjecture. After he led the troops to attack Purple Moon City, Wu Liqian and his son disappeared. He sent people to look for them, but to no avail. He thought that this pair of cowardly father and son had already fled to other countries. He didn't expect that they were still hiding outside Purple Moon City. They even took this opportunity to take Ji Yu away. As opponents, Jun Liuye knew that this pair of father and son were not really loyal. They took Ji Yu away because they wanted to use Ji Yu's name to get in touch with the real old subordinates of Ji Yu Kingdom. They wanted to use Ji Yu's name to take control of the Ji Yu Kingdom. They only wanted Emperor Full Moon to die as soon as possible. Ji Yu wanted them to save her parents. With Jun Liuye's intelligence, he could easily guess everything. He could also guess Ji Yu's situation. He knew that her life wouldn't be in danger, but she would most likely be forced to marry. As for Ji Yu, there was a high chance that she would agree. Furthermore, they might even get married immediately. This speculation made his heart burn. He was worried and angry about Jiyu. He was angry that she couldn't recognize people. He was even angrier that she allowed someone to send a substitute to pretend to be her. He had secretly planned everything for her, but she had let an assassin impersonate her, and then flew away with her childhood sweetheart who had ulterior motives. Those days, Junlioye was like sitting on pins and needles. He couldn't show it, so he secretly sent people everywhere to search. However, Wu Liqian and his son had hidden themselves so well that his men couldn't find them. Kai was also very alert. She didn't contact the outside world during the few days she had been in the palace. Kai was a very professional person. Even if she was tortured, she would not reveal the secrets of the main family. Therefore, Junlioye did not alert her, and only sent people to keep a close watch on her. It wasn't until 3 days later that Sai finally used a hummingbird to contact the outside world, which was secretly intercepted by Junlioye's people. Following the vine to the melon, they found Wu Tianxi's hiding place, the tomb hidden deep in the mountains. After finding the enemy's lair, Junlioye could naturally send troops to encircle and annihilate them. However, that place was easy to defend and hard to attack, so it was impossible to break through with lightning speed. He was confident that he could destroy Wu Tianxi's nest in one fell swoop, but he couldn't guarantee that Wu Tianxi wouldn't take desperate measures and use Jiyu as a hostage. Only by tricking Jiyu out of the mausoleum would he be able to attack without any scruples. Coincidentally, the imperial court also sent an imperial envoy to urge him to execute the full moon emperor. He had a sudden inspiration and agreed. He deliberately announced this matter to the people after the Purple Moon Festival ceremony, so that the people in the city would spread the news. Chapter 2579. He knew that Wu Tianxi must have spies in the city, who would pass the news back to his lair. In order to make Jiyu give up, Wu Tianxi must have arranged for her to enter the city to watch. Junlioye's guess was mostly correct, and could be said to be very accurate. The only thing he didn't expect was that Jiyu entered the city on the day of the Purple Moon Festival, and saw him and Sai on the city wall. Junlioye arranged everything very carefully, and his guess was right. On the second day of the Purple Moon Festival, his spies saw close to 100 people disguising themselves and entering the city. Because of Wu Liqian's disguise technique, Junlioye's spies couldn't see if Jiyu was among the 100 people who came out. In order to ensure that Wu Tianxi's men were all caught in one fell swoop, and to save Jiyu unscathed, Junlioye didn't take any action. He knew that as long as the emperor's slaying went on as planned, Jiyu would definitely come. In order to ensure that nothing went wrong, not only did he send out all the elites from the Dark Shadow Tower to search for Wu Liqian's men, he also disguised himself as an ordinary person and mixed in with the crowd to secretly search for Wu Liqian. Wu Liqian thought that his plan was flawless, but his behavior with Jiyu was still a little strange. Some clues still fell into the spy's eyes, and they used a secret signal to inform Junlioye. Junlioye quietly began to arrange the encirclement plan. At that time, Wu Liqian's men didn't know that they had already fallen into Junlioye's inescapable net, and were still pretending to be ordinary people to watch the show. Of course, the scene of Wu Liqian hugging Jiyu also fell into Junlioye's eyes, making him feel incomparably uncomfortable. He arranged everything, and was about to attack Wu Liqian, when Jiyu broke free from Wu Liqian's embrace, and rushed to the high platform. That was why he was able to save Jiyu at lightning speed. However, Wu Liqian's words, "My wife, we've just been married for a few days," completely infuriated him. He made up his mind to kill Wu Liqian on the spot. He had always thought that Jiyu had willingly left with Wu Liqian, and he also thought that she had really married Wu Liqian. He hated her betrayal, so he gave the military order in front of Jiyu, and let her witness the massacre with her own eyes. Then he helplessly watched her directly spit out blood. After Junlioye explained the whole sequence of events, the ice cave fell silent for a moment. After a while, Ning Xuema said, "So you let her see her parents being executed to take revenge on her?" Junlioye's face was pale as he closed his eyes. Yes, that pair of substitutes had to die in the first place. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to save her parents. Then did you secretly explain to her after this incident? Ning Xuema almost didn't dare to imagine Ji Yu's mood at that time. Jun Liuya's fingers trembled as he stroked the ice coffin. He shook his head. No, he said bitterly. I was too ruthless at that time. She didn't give me any chance to explain. Ning Xuemo raised her eyebrows. She refused to listen? Actually, girls sometimes don't mean what they say. Even if she's hurt by you and refuses to listen to your explanation, as long as you control her and force her to explain everything clearly, she'll still listen. You can't say that you don't have a chance to explain, unless you're afraid of leaking the secret and don't want to explain. Jun Liuya cut Ning Xuema off. She's crazy. Huh. Ning Xuema's heart sank. Jun Liuya's fingers trembled even more as he repeated, she's crazy. Chapter 2580. Jun Liuya's fingers trembled even more as he repeated, she went crazy. She saw her parents' heads fall to the ground. Then she spat out blood and fainted on the spot. I regretted it so much that I brought her back to the palace. I wanted to wait for her to wake up before I explained to her. But she went crazy after she woke up. Ning Xuema was speechless. Even she, who was an assassin, could not bear such a thing, let alone Ji Yu, who was once a spoiled little princess. The successive blows and betrayals had already caused her to be on the verge of despair. Witnessing her parents' deaths was the last straw that broke the camel's back. It was normal for her to go crazy. Jun Liuya looked at the person in the coffin and seemed to be immersed in his memories. She went completely crazy. She did not recognize anyone and was afraid of everyone. She hid in the corner every day, refusing to let anyone get close to her. If anyone approached her, she would scream and tremble in fear. Jun Liuya's voice trembled slightly. I invited all the miracle doctors in the continent, but none of them could cure her. I also took the risk and sent her to the place where Emperor Yuanyu and his wife lived in seclusion. I thought that maybe if she saw her parents were still alive, she might be able to regain her senses. But she did not even recognize her parents. She only recognized their two pillows, and would often hug them, and call them Father Emperor and Mother Empress. She would not let anyone take them away. As long as the pillows were touched, she would cry herself hoarse and scream, "Don't kill me, don't kill me." Ning Xuema thought that she was hard-hearted enough, but at this moment, she felt her nose tingle. It was as if she could see the bright and lively girl's appearance after she went crazy. Shen Juli stood behind her and quietly hugged her waist. He seemed to have sensed her emotions and pressed his lips against her forehead. Ning Xuema also relaxed her body and leaned into his embrace. The cave was cold, especially after she read Ji Yu's memories. She felt that the cave was bone-chilling. Fortunately, the great god was by her side, and his embrace was as warm as spring. Her gaze fell on the ice coffin again. The girl in the coffin was serene and quiet, as if she had sunk into some kind of gentle dreamland, and was unwilling to wake up. She did not want to face the storms of this world again. I don't believe that she's gone crazy. I brought her to see the moon in the desert, and I brought her to the mountains to see the sunrise. These are all things that she said she wanted to do the most. I've done them all, but she still hasn't improved. She can't see the moon, nor can she see the sun. In her eyes, there are only those two pillows. She can't accept anything else. Jun Liuya's voice grew hoarser and hoarser as he clenched his fists. Qianshang, after we get married, can you take me to the desert? I heard that the moon there is even rounder than the moon in Purple Moon City. We also have to go to a very, very high mountain. The sunrise on the mountain is also very beautiful. It's bright red and can make everything red. He closed his eyes as if he had returned to the beginning. He was still Yi Qianshang, and he had promised her that he would marry her. She was as happy as a child, jumping and screaming as she hugged him. Her charming little face was filled with vitality as she kept making requests in his ears with a yearning look on her face. He had teased her back then. You're a princess, have you never been to these places? She blinked her large eyes with a bit of embarrassment. Royal father doesn't let me. He's afraid that I'll be blown away by the wind in the desert and get sick from the wind in the mountains. Chapter 2581. She blinked her large eyes in embarrassment. Royal father didn't let me. He was afraid that I'd be blown away by the wind in the desert, or get sick from the wind in the mountains. Then she hugged his neck and looked at him with an expectant look. You'll take me there in the future, right? Afraid that he would look down on her, she jumped up and pretended to fight. I have martial arts, I won't drag you down. If a beast comes, I can beat it away. At that time, she was as innocent as a crystal and as proud as a little peacock. She didn't know the hardships of the world and only had him in her eyes. Her world was filled with sunshine, but he was the one who pushed her into hell. If everything could start over. When did you find out that you loved her? You shouldn't have loved her when you were Yi Qianshang, right? Ning Xuema suddenly asked a sharp question. Jun Luyi froze and gave a sigh after a while. When I first met her, I was just using her. Of course. I also liked her a bit. Until I broke Jiyu's country and kept her by my side. I found that her weight in my heart was much heavier than I thought. He had grown up in a treacherous environment and had suffered a lot. His heart had long been tempered to be harder than steel. There was only ambition in his eyes, so feelings were just superfluous to him. He never thought that he would fall in love with a woman. Although he liked Jiyu a bit, compared to his ambition, it couldn't even be considered a fraction. That was why he used Jiyu so thoroughly and didn't show any mercy. He thought that leaving Jiyu and her parents alive was already not letting her down. Until he saw her pain and the hatred in her eyes, he finally realized what he had lost. He didn't want her to hate him. He wanted her to rely on him like before and talk to him like before. So he began to seriously plan for their future. He thought that as long as his goal was good, it would be good for her, and he would be able to obtain her forgiveness. His plan wasn't bad, but he didn't consider Jiyu's tolerance. He made a mistake that couldn't be taken back. He didn't have a chance to explain. Until the moment she died, she didn't believe that he loved her. And he would never have the chance to make her believe him again. Sorrow flooded his heart like a tide, bringing with it an almost suffocating pain. Jun Liuya caressed the ice coffin and lowered his eyes to look at the face of the person in the coffin. For a moment he was lost in thought. If he hadn't been blinded by jealousy that day, and told her that this was a substitute when he killed the emperor of the full moon couple, perhaps she wouldn't have gone crazy, and things wouldn't have developed to this point where they couldn't be salvaged inside the ice cave. He stood tall and straight, his back looking unusually bleak. Ning Xuema could even see a few strands of white hair between his temples. When she first read Jiyu's memories, Ning Xuema still had the urge to slash Jun Liuya. Now that she saw him like this, she felt that he was a little pitiful. Guru, do you think they? Ning Xuema raised her head to ask for the guru's opinion. Shin Juli only commented with 3 words. You brought this upon yourself. Ning Xuema. She coughed and said, Guru, there is a saying that the onlooker sees more clearly than the person involved. If you were in Jun Liuya's position and fell in love with Jiyu. Chapter 2582. Before she could finish her sentence, Shin Juli interrupted her. I'm not him, and I won't fall in love with him. I only love you. Ning Xuema was speechless. The great god's confession was really. That's right. The great god had always been high and mighty, never being controlled by anyone. He didn't need to care about other people's feelings, always doing things his own way. Naturally, he couldn't understand Jun Liuya's situation at that time. Jun Liuya was just an ordinary prince who grew up in a world of mutual deception. He was feared by his own father and schemed against by his brothers. One wrong step and he would be consigned to eternal damnation. He and Jiyu were originally people from 2 different worlds. Perhaps they shouldn't have crossed paths. Ning Xuema glanced at the ice coffin and Jun Liuya again. Fortunately, she and the great god spoke in secret. Otherwise, wouldn't this war god emperor be hurt? Ning Xuema suddenly thought of something. Great god, do you have a way to treat Jiyu's mental illness? Shen Juli replied casually. It's not hard to treat. She was too frightened and sad, so a part of her soul was hurt. You just need to repair that part of her soul. His tone was like mending a fishing net, understated. Ning Xuemo rubbed her brows. The great god's treatment method was simple, crude, and incomparably superior. However, even if she used ordinary methods to treat this kind of madness, she would still be able to treat 80% or 90% of it. This continent didn't seem small, so why didn't they find a real godly doctor back then? Ning Xuemo carelessly blurted out her doubts. Jun Liuye, who was standing beside the ice coffin, calmed down a bit. He faintly said, "When she went crazy, I didn't give up and tried every possible way to find a godly doctor. Later, I heard that there was a godly doctor in Xingyue country who specialized in treating mental illnesses. I acted as if I had found a treasure and immediately secretly brought her to Xingyue country." Ning Xuemo was stunned. Wait, Xingyu country, wasn't it the last big country at that time? You destroyed Jiyu country, so the king of Xingyu country must have listed you as his biggest enemy and sent a bunch of assassins to assassinate you. You still dared to take a crazy woman to Xingyu country? Wasn't this automatically sending yourself to be killed? Jun Liuye expressionlessly said, "I set up a secret branch in Xingyu country. After he saw Jiyu's illness, he told me that he had the confidence to cure her, but the treatment would have to continue for 8 days. Of course, I was overjoyed, thinking that the heavens' eyes finally opened, giving me a chance to redeem myself and get her back. But I didn't expect that my brother Crown Prince to find out where I went to seek medical treatment in Yu country, and secretly told the king of Xingyu country. On the 4th day Jesus's assassins tesses you." Ning Xuema did not need to think about it to understand the thrill of that time. She did not interrupt and waited for Jun Liuye to continue. The doctor had a strange habit. No matter who he treated, he did not allow anyone to stay in the valley, and only allowed 2 people to enter at a time. Every time after the treatment, I had to leave with Jiyu and live in a secret place outside the valley. We would go again the next day. On the 4th day, I brought Jiyu into the valley as usual, but what greeted me was an assassination attempt. 13 assassins hid in the doctor's house and wanted to kill me by surprise. In order to progress faster, this story will be narrated to explain most of the plot. Also, this story is not insignificant, and it is not entirely a new story. It will be explained later. Everyone, please be patient. While writing this story, Mumu was also thinking about the 3rd chapter. Everyone, please choose between Little Nianma and Shuilan. I can also think of it in advance. I will make this decision based on the opinions of the majority, so please leave your comments. Love you. Chapter 2583. Luckily, I sensed that something was wrong and didn't fall for their trap. When I got rid of those assassins, I found that the godly doctor had already been killed and stuffed under the bed. Ning Xuema was speechless. When it rains, it pours. Jun Liuye continued, Xingyue country's monarch wanted me dead. Not only did he send a bunch of assassins, he also sent soldiers to surround Cool Breeze Valley and set it on fire. I tried my best to escape with Jiyu, but I lost more than 100 of my elite subordinates. Jiyu had already shown some improvement, but she was frightened by the assassination. Although she no longer screamed, she was still in a daze and didn't respond to anyone's calls. Jun Liuye closed his eyes. After that, I found many so-called godly doctors, but they couldn't do anything. They all advised me to accept my fate. How could he accept his fate? He hadn't asked for her forgiveness yet. He hadn't told her the truth that her parents were still alive. The past was too heavy, and Jun Liuye wasn't someone who liked to explain things in detail. Moreover, he was always in a daze, so he might not be able to answer more than 2 questions. Shen Juli was a very straightforward person. He didn't bother to ask any more questions, so he used the most direct method, reading Jun Liuye's memories. Everything that happened after that was like a painting, unfolding in front of Shen Juli's eyes. Of course, Ning Xuema was always by his side, so the memories he read were also displayed in front of Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema finally understood what happened after that. Jun Liuye's memories were just like his personality, organized and concise. Many places were swept past in a flash, but it was enough for people to roughly understand what had happened. Some places were very clear, so clear that it was as if it had happened in front of one's eyes. After Jun Liuye brought Jiyu back to Huiyue country, he used his channels to investigate and found out that the crown prince was behind all this. Old and new hatred came together, making Jun Liuye want to kill the crown prince. With his ability, it wasn't too difficult to kill the crown prince. The reason he didn't do it at first was because he had some misgivings and still cared about his brotherly feelings. He used his own methods to kill the crown prince, shocking everyone in Huiyue country. The king of the Huiyue nation was furious. He wanted to punish him and send troops to arrest him. Who would have thought that not only would they fail to capture him, they would even force him to rebel and lead his troops to force the emperor to abdicate. After a bloody palace coup, the king of the Huiyue kingdom issued an abdication edict and had no choice but to pass the throne to Jun Liuye. He became the retired emperor without any real power and was imprisoned in a palace by Jun Liuye, unable to cause any more trouble. When Jun Liuye ascended the throne, the first thing he did was to make the insane Jiyu his empress. This simply challenged the three views of the ministers. Naturally, they were fiercely opposed to it. Among them, Prime Minister Xiao, who had been assisting him, had the strongest reaction. He still wanted his daughter, Hongxiang, to be the empress. The ministers used the fiercest method to remonstrate, and they almost carried the coffin into the throne room. However, Jun Liuye had already made up his mind. The minister's death remonstrances were like a breeze to him, and he didn't care at all. Some ministers were so agitated that they directly killed themselves in the throne room. But he didn't even blink as he watched coldly from the side. After this contest between the monarch and his ministers, the ministers finally understood that the new emperor was different from before. In the past, although he was strict in his management of the army, he was still a modest gentleman in front of the ministers. He also handled things rather gently and smoothly. Chapter 2584. Now he was cold and merciless. Other than that crazy Princess Jiyu, he showed no mercy to anyone else. He also held military power. Although the ministers were dissatisfied with him, they could not rebel against him. They could only helplessly agree with his decisions. Jun Liuye finally got his wish to marry Jiyu and made her his empress. Unfortunately, she was still in a daze and did not respond to anyone or anything. Jun Liuye could not even be intimate with her. Every time he got close to her, she would scream and tremble. She would have a major seizure. Jun Liuye naturally could not force her. He could only look at her from a distance. The person he loved was clearly by his side, but they were so close yet so far apart. Jun Liuye was undoubtedly an expert in governing a country. He was a born emperor. He had ascended the throne for less than half a year. After a round of bloody political changes, his country was finally stabilized. The political situation was stable, and the people submitted to him. Everyone in the imperial court was his people. Aside from occasionally being dissatisfied with some of his actions, they were all loyal to him. After stabilizing the rear, he began to personally lead the troops to attack Xingyue country. Firstly, it was to take revenge for the previous incident. Secondly, it was to obtain a treasure from Xingyue country's palace, the Clear Spirit Pearl. It was said that this pearl was left behind by the emperor when he came to this continent a few hundred years ago. It was said that wearing this pearl could make one immortal. The emperor of Xingyue country had always worn it. His youthful appearance was due to this pearl. Jun Liuye was not interested in immortality. He only wanted this pearl because he heard of another effect of this pearl. It was said that swallowing this pearl could make even a fool smart. Ji was just crazy. Perhaps this pearl could make her return to normal. Xingyue country was the second strongest country in this continent. It was not much worse than Huiyue country. Although Huiyue country had annexed Jiyu country, its strength had increased greatly. It was not that easy to completely destroy Xingyue country. Moreover, the emperor of Xingyue country was also a valiant emperor. He was loved and respected by the people. He was also good at using people. He had countless soldiers and generals under his command. He was completely different from Jiyu country's Emperor Full Moon, who did not have the support of the people. It was easy to imagine the difficulty of directly attacking such a country. When Jun Liuya personally led the troops, it was a snowy winter. Outside the city gate the army stretched for several miles, and the banners were blazing. Not only were the civil and military officials sending them off, but there were also the families of the soldiers. When they parted, they were reluctant to part. This was especially true for the wives of the soldiers. Their eyes were brimming with tears as they repeatedly exhorted and exhorted. Jun Liuya rode alone on a tall horse. Dressed in black and wearing a silver mask, he looked exceptionally cold and lonely. His gaze swept over the soldiers who were reluctant to part with their families, and a touch of sadness flashed through his eyes. Naturally, there were many people who came to see him off, but none of them was the person he wanted. The battlefield was constantly changing and extremely dangerous, so it was naturally inconvenient for him to bring her along. Thus, he left her in the palace and entrusted her to a trusted confidant to take care of her, which was the most appropriate thing to do. Of course, he still couldn't resist going to her palace to bid her farewell that night. Just as he expected, no matter what he said to her, she did not respond at all, as if she did not hear him. Naturally, he would not tell him to be careful out of concern. Just like now, as his only empress, she would not send him off when he was about to go to war. It was time to set off. The soldiers regrouped and were ready to set off. Jun Liuya also turned his horse around and was about to lead the troops out. Chapter 2585. The soldiers regrouped and readied themselves. Jun Liuya also turned his horse around and was about to set off. Suddenly, he seemed to have sensed something and abruptly turned around. 2 women and a man were standing on the city gate tower. It was Jiyu Jun Lufeng and Xiao Hongxiang. Speaking of which, it was strange. After returning from Xingyu country halfway through her treatment, Jiyu did not reject the approach of other people, such as the maids who served her, or even Jun Lufeng and Xiao Hongxiang. She only rejected Jun Liuya. Right now, the 3 of them were standing on top of the city gate tower. Jun Lufeng and Xiao Hongxiang were waving at him with all their might, and Jiyu, who had always treated him as nothing and never looked at him, was actually looking at him from afar. She placed her hand on the city wall and pursed her lips, looking at him like a normal person. Jun Liuya's body stiffened slightly as he stared at her from afar. His eyesight was good, and he could even see the slightest change in her expression. She seemed to be smiling. Jun Liuya's mind exploded. He actually leaped up from his horse. Under everyone's gaze, he flew up the tall city wall like a black eagle. He landed on the city gate tower and landed in front of Jiyu. It was only after he landed on the ground that he realized what he had done. He had actually done such a reckless thing like a miserable youth who had just fallen in love for the first time. The people below the city gasped, but he didn't care and took a big step towards Jiyu. Jiyu, however, screamed as if she had been frightened. She took a few steps back and hid behind Hongxiang. Her body trembled slightly, and she no longer looked at him. This attitude was almost the same as when she saw him. Jun Liuya's eyes dimmed, and the hands that wanted to hug her slowly fell. Jun Lufeng tried to smooth things over. "Royal brother, take care." Jun Liuya nodded. "Take good care of her at home." Jun Lufeng nodded solemnly. "Don't worry, royal brother. I won't let you down." Jun Liuya glanced at Jiyu, who was hiding behind Hongxiang, and refused to show her face. He then turned around and flew down the city wall, swearing to sweep the world regardless of his own body. 5,000 officers and soldiers died in the smoke and dust. Sleeping at night with golden spears and iron clothes, blood stains the battlefield, all dead souls. 8 months passed in the blink of an eye. War had always been cruel, especially when it came to wars between countries. It was even more tragic. After every battle, there would be countless bones and souls left on the battlefield. Although Jun Liuya was very good at leading troops into battle, the other side was not easy to deal with. His attack was not particularly successful, and in the 8 months since the start of the war, He had already lost tens of thousands of soldiers. Of course, the other side had suffered even more losses, twice as many as him. Moreover, he had also taken down countless cities. His army was slowly approaching the capital of Star Moon Nation, the City of Stars. At Tianjia Pass, his army encountered the most tenacious resistance. The Tianjia Pass was an important gateway to the vast Star City. As long as the Tianjia Pass was taken down, then the vast Star City would be just around the corner. Ning Xuema followed Shen Juli to read Jun Liuya's memories. Naturally, she saw many war scenes. Even though she was used to seeing the world, she still frowned slightly. One of Shen Juli's arms was wrapped around her, while the other was placed on Jun Liuya's forehead to read his memories. He seemed to feel the change in Ning Xuema's mood. He glanced at her and suddenly said, "Do you want to change the way I read your memories?" Ning Xuema did not expect him to be able to speak so casually at this time. She could not help but look at Jun Liuya. Jun Liuya closed his eyes and stood there motionless like an old monk. Chapter 2586. It was clear that Shen Juli had brought her directly into his memories. She hadn't been awakened by Shen Juli. "How do I change?" Shen Juli's voice was still casual. "Just go in." Ah. Before Ning Xuema could react, a white light flashed in front of her eyes. When she came back to her senses, she found herself floating in the air, and Shen Juli was beside her, still holding her waist. There was a huge purple moon in the sky, and below them were endless battlefields and tents. "Where are we?" "In Jun Liuya's memories." Shen Juli's answer was straightforward. The Almighty could actually pull her directly into someone's memories. A new skill. In one of the novels she had read, if the main character wanted to enter someone's memories, he had to play a specific song and use blood as a guide. The procedures were very complicated. She didn't expect that the Almighty would directly pull her in. He didn't even make a gesture. And her Almighty was even more awesome. Ning Xuema's eyes sparkled as she stared at Shen Juli. She almost had stars in her eyes. Shen Juli put an arm on her shoulder and asked lazily, "You look like you admire me a lot?" Ning Xuema nodded without hesitation. "Almighty, you are my idol." Shen Juli's eyes flashed with a smile. His wife seeing him as an idol naturally made him very happy. He accepted all her praises and replied with a single word. She praised him for so long, and he only replied with This was too perfunctory. Ning Xuema was a little dissatisfied. She looked at him. "Almighty, what am I to you?" She wanted to get a compliment from Shen Juli, such as "you are my pride," or something. Shen Juli didn't even think about it, and replied with a single word, "Wife." "Ning Xuema." Shen Juli glanced at her. As if he could see her disappointment, he changed the word, "wifey." Ning Xuema pursed her lips even tighter. She seemed even more displeased. Shen Juli thought about it seriously this time and thought of another word, "wife." Ning Xuema was speechless. It seemed like getting a compliment from the Almighty was harder than ascending to the heavens. Forget it. She didn't want to make things difficult for the Almighty. The Almighty wasn't someone who would easily praise others. Moreover, the title of the Almighty's wife wasn't too bad. She patted her mouth and said, "All right, I won't force you anymore. I know I'm your wife, your wife, your wife." Before she could finish, Shen Juli interrupted her. He smiled and looked at her, his eyes serious. "You are still my one and only, my life." Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. Who said that the Almighty couldn't say sweet nothings? Once he said those words of love, it would really make her heart beat faster. She was obviously thick-skinned and didn't blush easily. But under the teasing of the Almighty's words, she actually blushed. "You're blushing?" Shen Juli looked at her with a faint smile, and even pinched her cheeks. How could Ning Xuema admit it? What's there to blush about? It's just that the weather is too hot, and I'm wearing thick clothes. She casually found an excuse. Hot weather? Wearing thick clothes? Shen Juli repeated the question twice. The smile on his face widened. This place was extremely remote, and had a cold climate. Although it was August, the north wind was still blowing, and there was even snow in some places. Ning Xuema was wearing a thin chiffon dress. The sleeves were fluttering. but it couldn't be considered thick. If it was any thinner, she would be running around naked. Ning Xuemo quickly realized this. Chapter 2587. Ning Xuemo quickly realized this as well. Seeing the Almighty's teasing gaze, even the tips of her ears turned red. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to calm down. This is someone else's memory after all. The weather is abnormal, so my feelings are also abnormal. Looking up, she saw Shunjuli looking at her deeply. His eyes were very deep, and there was a familiar burning heat in them. Her heart skipped a beat, and she tried to pull her hand away. I can make you even hotter, Shunjuli slowly said. Using a bit of force, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. Ning Xuemo froze. The Almighty had only returned to his original form this morning. He had not had the chance to be intimate with her before he came to this ice cave with Jun Liuya. With a third person present and busy reading Jiyu's memory, the two did not cross the line. Of course, the Almighty had his arm around her waist and was very intimate with her. But to Shunjuli, this was clearly not enough. Now that he finally had the chance, he naturally kissed her to his heart's content. Ning Xuemo still had some misgivings, so she forced her mouth open. Almighty, we're still in someone else's memory. Below them was a bustling military camp. Although they were in mid-air, the people below should be able to see them clearly if they looked up, okay? Don't worry, the people here won't see us. Shunjuli captured her mouth and blurted out, focus. Thus Ning Xuemo focused. Not only that, she even reached out and wrapped her arms around his neck, passionately responding to him. Shunjuli's eyes flashed with a smile, but the bottom of his eyes deepened and burned with passion. The kiss deepened, amidst the intense entanglement of their tongues. He suddenly put her down and turned her over to press her against the clouds. With a wave of his hand, her clothes disappeared. His warm body pressed against hers. Ning Xuemo, who had been kissed senselessly by him, was now somewhat sober. She hurriedly reached out to push him away. Almighty, we're here to look at his memories. Shunjuli glanced down and saw that there was a fierce battle going on below. It doesn't matter. His memories are still going on. It's not a big deal. Come look at me. Shunjuli's incomparably handsome face was right in front of her. His eyes were as deep as the ocean, as if they were going to swallow her whole. Although Ning Xuemo had been intimate with him countless times, being stared at by him like this still made her heart beat faster and her blood boil. She didn't say anything, but stretched out her arms and hugged him tightly. She raised her body and kissed the tip of his nose. Her eyes were brighter than the stars in the sky, and her face was redder than the rosy clouds on the horizon. Shunjuli couldn't help but smile. He loved her so much that he wanted to be with her all the time. He wanted to become one with her. No matter how close he got, he felt that it wasn't enough. Perhaps only a zero distance or a negative distance could fill each other's hearts. I'm in you, and you're in me. There was a breeze in the sky, and a few clouds were blown over, blocking the intense entanglement between the two of them. They didn't know how much time had passed, and the scene below had changed countless times. However, the clouds that enveloped the two of them didn't change at all. Finally, the clouds slowly dispersed, revealing the two of them inside. Ning Xuemo was still sitting in his arms. Both of them were neatly dressed, and Ning Xuemo was still panting slightly. Even with her great physical strength, her waist was still sore after this round. Her body was extremely weak, and she didn't want to get up from the Almighty's embrace. Chapter 2588. Shunjuli sat there with his arms around her. He looked like a cat that was content with its life. Ning Xuemo rubbed her waist and complained. Just now you were too torturous. I clearly told you to stop. Shunjuli used his fingertips to pick up a strand of her hair and played with it in his palm. He leisurely said, Didn't you say that girls often say one thing and mean another? Then when you said stop, you actually meant that you wanted me to continue. Ning Xuemo. Great God, you're too shameless. You actually used these words to stop her. She moved her body, The white cloud below her was soft and very comfortable. She suddenly thought of a very important question. Great God! I remember that after I came to this world my psychokinesis disappeared. How can I still sit on the white cloud so freely? Because we're now in spirit bodies and not physical bodies. Shenjuli explained to her. Ning Xuema was shocked. You're saying that our bodies are still in the cave? Smart. Shenjuli praised her. She actually used her spirit body to make love with the great god once. The great god said that using this method to read her memories was more convenient. But it was actually more convenient to be intimate with her, right? The great god was indeed the great god, so two-faced. She looked down and changed the topic. What's the next step? Shenjuli casually replied. Junliuye and Xingyu country's defenders fought 3 more times. They won 2 times, and killed 30,000 of the enemy. Now they're besieging the city. The great god was so busy just now, but he still saw it so clearly. Great god, you weren't focused. Ning Xuema finally caught Shenjuli's weakness. She was originally the least focused. Later, under his powerful attacks, she couldn't pay attention to her surroundings. She didn't even know where she was. Shenjuli's eyes flashed. Wifey, you're saying that you're not satisfied with your husband's performance just now? He looked like he would do it again, as soon as she said she wasn't satisfied. Ning Xuema hurriedly waved her hand. I'm satisfied. I can't be more satisfied. Shenjuli smiled. He stretched out his long legs, and leaned over to kiss her on the cheek. Thank you for your praise, my wife. Ning Xuema didn't dare to linger on this topic. She pulled his hand and said, let's go down and take a look. I'm actually not interested in how Junliuye fights. I'm only interested in Jiyu's death. She was already crazy. Who would want to poison her? Oh right, almighty. I didn't expect you to be involved in their story. Shenjuli's eyes flickered slightly as he said indifferently. Perhaps this is the reason why we are here. Ning Xuema's eyes lit up. Are you saying that they might be our second pair of quests? Shenjuli nodded. That's right. The Heavenly Law Stone had said that this kind of quest was to set things right. It was to change the outcome of his original participation. A few hundred years ago, there were 3 countries on this continent. He felt that it was quite good. In order to maintain this situation, he gave each country a gift that didn't belong to this world. Xingyue country had the clear spirit pearl, Jiyu country had the city protection crystal, and Huiwa country had the sky-changing bow. These 3 treasures each had their own powerful uses. They could protect the peace of a region. Because of this, the 3 countries maintained this state for several hundred years. It was only when Junliuye appeared that this delicate balance was broken. In fact, the world's situation was bound to be divided after a long period of union, and united after a long period of separation. Originally, the 3 countries wouldn't have existed for too long. If Shenjuli hadn't left behind these 3 treasures, this situation would have been broken in a few decades. Then, a hegemon would have truly unified the 3 countries. Chapter 2589. If Jiyu didn't have the city-protecting crystal, Junliuye wouldn't have known Princess Jiyu, and all of this wouldn't have happened. Ning Xuema rubbed her forehead. I don't think it's good to help this pair. There's not only a misunderstanding between them, but also a grudge against their country. Even if Jiyu revives, she might not be willing to be with Junliuye again, unless she completely loses her memories. Great God! You're not thinking of erasing her memories after saving her, are you? Shenjuli's tone was light. I won't. My task is to let them return to their original path, not necessarily to help them. Original path? Then, shouldn't these 2 people not know each other? But they already know each other, and have such deep entanglements. How is Great God going to set things right? Ning Xuema was in a daze for a while before looking down. Suddenly her eyes widened. Why is Junliuye losing? Below, Junliuye's army was like a sheet of loose sand, retreating 100 li. Only then did they once again set up camp. Junliuye's military talent was comparable to Zhuge Liang's. Ning Xuema had never seen him lose a battle. This was the first time he was in such a sorry state. Looking at the state of these soldiers, It was obvious that the commander was not in a good position. What's going on? Shenjuli also glanced down. Last night, Jun Liuye received a secret letter from the capital saying that Princess Jiyu went missing. Ning Xuema suddenly understood. Only Jiyu's matter could cause Jun Liuye to act so abnormally. But Jiyu was a fool and shouldn't have run around. Jun Lufeng was also a meticulous person. With him watching over Jiyu, logically speaking, it was impossible for her to go missing. Unless someone was unhappy with Jiyu and secretly harmed her. But no matter if it was the imperial court or the harem, they were all sincerely convinced by Jun Liuye and didn't dare to provoke him. Everyone knew that Jiyu was at the top of his heart and couldn't be neglected. Who would be so blind as to poke this hornet's nest? Or perhaps, great God, do you have any ideas? Shenjuli shook his head slightly and said straightforwardly, No, I'm not interested in other women's movements. This is Jun Liuye's memory. Things have already happened, so we can only watch. Ning Xuemo. The Almighty was indeed the Almighty. When he didn't want to use his brain, he was still very lazy. She looked down and her heart skipped a beat. Most of Jun Liuye's memories seemed to be fast-forwarded, with many scenes flashing by. Ning Xuema felt as if she had pressed the fast-forward button when she was looking at it earlier. Only when it was something extremely important, or something that left a deep impression on him would the image pause for a long time. But now the image below was clear and slow. Every scene was extremely clear. Ning Xuema looked down, then looked at the large moon. Could it be that this night had left a deep impression on Jun Liuye? She pulled Shenjuli. Guru, let's go down and take a look. The central tent was brightly lit. Jun Liuye was dressed in martial attire as he sat behind the commander's desk. His face was as calm as water as he asked the subordinates kneeling below. Still no news. Your Majesty, all of Shadow Tower's spies have been sent out to search the capital's streets and alleys. But they still haven't found the Empress's whereabouts. Your Majesty, the news from the capital said that the Empress was still fine 10 days ago. Who would have thought that she would disappear the next morning? None of her maids saw how she went missing. Chapter 2590. This matter is indeed strange. The Empress residence has a large array. Those who aren't familiar with the terrain can't sneak in. And the Empress servants are all carefully selected. They are the most suitable people, so it's impossible for them to betray their master. The 8th prince has already imprisoned all the related people and used a secret technique to interrogate them. No one saw how the Empress left. Jun Lufeng had a secret technique to interrogate people. No matter how tightly sealed their mouths were, he could still pry them open and make them tell the truth. Since he used this secret technique to interrogate them, it proved that those people were indeed innocent. But how did the crazy Jiyu disappear? Unless Jun Liuye's face was pale as he clenched his fists. Unless she escaped on her own. But she was still crazy, so how could she escape on her own? Your Majesty, outside. There is someone outside who wants to see you. She said she is Jiyu. Princess Jiyu. A soldier suddenly ran in and stammered. What? Jun Liuye suddenly stood up. The other trusted generals in the tent also opened their mouths wide, as if they could swallow a duck's egg. Jun Liuye almost rushed out. Then, he stopped in his tracks and stared in one direction, holding his breath. Outside the tent, under the moonlight, stood a woman. She was wearing a light red robe. Her black hair fell to her forehead, and her eyebrows were like a painting. She stood there quietly, like an ink painting slowly unfolding under the moonlight. She still looked the same as before. Hearing the noise, she raised her head, and a pair of bright eyes looked at Jun Liuye. She smiled like a flower. 1,000 deaths. Jun Liuye staggered for a moment, then slowly walked over. Jiyu tilted her head and looked at him. Her cheeks were red, and so were her lips. Jiyu. He reached out his arms and tightly held her in his embrace, as if she would suddenly grow wings and run away. Jiyu was almost unable to breathe from his embrace. She reached out her small fist and hit him twice. Let go, there are so many people here. Jun Liuye's arms loosened slightly. Of course, he didn't let go of her. He looked into her eyes, as if he wanted to confirm something. Her large eyes were very clear like crystals. Under his gaze, her cheeks turned red. What are you looking at? She didn't look like she was faking it, and she didn't know how to fake it. Junliuye suddenly bent down and picked her up horizontally. She cried out in surprise and wrapped her arms around her chest. Her body slightly curled up in his embrace, but she immediately struggled. Hey, let go. There are still so many of your subordinates here. Junliuye looked at her deeply, his eyes darkening. Then he chuckled. What subordinate? Isn't it just you and me here? Ji was taken aback for a moment. She turned her head and looked around. She found that there was no one around. No one wanted to be a third wheel at this time. They all scattered like birds and beasts, leaving only him and her in front of the main tent. Junliuye carried her into the bedchamber. This place was bitterly cold, and Jiyu's clothes were not thick, so her hands and feet were cold. The tent was as warm as spring. Jiyu sat on Junliuye's bed, wrapped in a thick, soft blanket. She leaned on Junliuye's body, looking very comfortable. Junliuye was still not at ease, so he got up and poured her a cup of warm wine. He directly put it to her lips and said, "Come, drink this first to warm yourself up." Jiyu obediently took a sip from his hand and wrinkled her beautiful brows. So spicy. Junliuye's eyes were apologetic. There's no wine for girls in the army. Chapter 2591. He stood up again. Wait a moment. I'll get someone to buy your favorite lotus fragrance wine. The military was filled with hot-blooded men who loved to drink the strongest alcohol. Naturally, they would prepare this type of wine. Jiyu pulled him back. Forget it. Don't make this special for me. She tugged at the corner of his shirt and looked him up and down. Pursing her lips, she said, "You seem to have gotten darker and thinner. The war must be tough, right?" Junliuye kept looking at her. Suddenly, he sighed and hugged her. Rubbing his chin on her head, he said, "It's not tough, Jiyu. Now that you're here, it's not tough at all." Guru, do you think Jiyu lost her memory after recovering from her illness? Ning Xuema and Shen Jili floated at the top of the tent. Relying on the fact that no one could see them, Ning Xuema looked down and judged. Shen Jili glanced at the two hugging below and answered with a few words. It's a good thing if she really lost her memory. Ning Xuema sighed. That's true. The two of them were separated by a great national grudge. If Jiyu didn't lose her memory, why would she be willing to be with him? Why would she come looking for him? If she really lost her memory, then those injuries wouldn't exist for her. But did she really lose her memory? Ning Xuema looked at Junliuye. He had probably noticed Jiyu's abnormality, but she didn't know how he felt right now. His beloved's illness was finally cured. He finally had a chance to explain to her, but she lost her memory again. Looking at her appearance, she didn't remember the injuries at all. How was Junliuye going to explain it to her? Ning Xuema was guessing when the guru's voice suddenly rang out. No need to watch. Let's go outside and wait. Ning Xuema was stunned, and she was already outside the tent. Guru, this memory is so clear. It's obviously important. I think we should watch the whole thing. Ning Xuema was still unwilling to give up. Shen Juli pulled her into his arms and said directly, I don't like you staring at other men. Don't worry, they will come out again. The great god's possessiveness, Ning Xuema said helplessly. If you don't want me to look, then I can at least listen, right? Shall we go and listen? Shen Juli looked at her and suddenly smiled slowly. Xuema, so this is your taste. Ha! Which one? Ning Xuema was confused. You like to eavesdrop. Shen Juli slowly opened his mouth with a smile that was not a smile. Ning Xuema was speechless. Originally, it was an honorable matter. How could the great god make it sound vulgar? Jiyu, how did you get here? Junliuye's voice came through the wind. Ning Xuema was stunned. She was currently 200 meters away from the tent. Logically speaking, she shouldn't be able to hear what the people in the tent were saying. She looked at Shen Juli and Shen Juli pulled her to sit down. Since you want to listen, then listen here. So it was the great god's doing. Aside from the great god, there probably wasn't a second person who could do as he pleased in other people's memories. Ning Xuema fell into Shenjuli's arms. She openly eavesdropped while praising him in satisfaction. Great God, you're really perverted. Shenjuli didn't mind. Thanks for your praise. Your husband will be perverted again tonight. Ning Xuema was speechless. All right, she shouldn't bicker with the great God. She should just focus on eavesdropping on the two people in the tent. Chapter 2592. Qianshang, there's something strange. I seem to have slept for a long time, and after I woke up, I seem to have forgotten some things. However, it's a good thing that I still remember you. I remember that you promised to marry me, and you really did marry me. However, my memories are hazy, and there are many things that I only remember in bits and pieces. Am I sick? After a while, she heard Jun Liuya's gentle reply. And you're sick. After I woke up, I found out that you led an army to attack Xingyu country. So I ran out of the palace to find you. Qianshang, why didn't you bring me to war? Jiyu's voice had a trace of grievance. Marching and fighting is very tiring. Jiyu, I didn't want you to suffer. Liar, it's clearly you who didn't want me. Jiyu, I missed you, and I never forgot you. There was some movement in the tent, and after a while, Jiyu's low cry of surprise was heard. Aya you woo. Jiyu, I'll let you understand how much I missed you. Jun Liuya's voice was very dark, and then there was a sound that made people's faces turn red. It seemed that Jun Liuya had pushed Jiyu down. The sound suddenly disappeared, and only the sound of the wind could be heard. Ning Xuema looked at the great god from the corner of her eyes, but the great god's expression did not change, and he only said 4 words. It's not suitable for children. Ning Xuema. Great God, how many times have you done such things that are not suitable for children? She listened carefully again, but she really couldn't hear anything, so she gave up. When she read Jiyu's memories with the great god, there were also some intimate scenes. She was originally very interested, but every time that happened, the great god would use a spell to cover it up. The great god's mosaic was better than anyone else's, so Ning Xuema couldn't even see a hazy shadow. Now that it was like this again, Ning Xuema also knew that it was useless to argue. She suddenly thought of a question. Great God, when you read Jiyu's memories just now, why didn't you use this method? She felt that this method was more immersive, and she could also talk to the great God casually. It was more than a level higher than the old method. Shenjuli rested his head on her shoulder and replied lazily. This method can only be used on living people. It's useless on dead people. Ning Xuema understood. Shenjuli looked at her with an ambiguous smile in his eyes. You suddenly asked this question. Did you want me to use this method for a long time? Ning Xuema. She recalled that when she first entered this memory realm, the Almighty had pushed her down without saying a word. Her pretty face tensed up and she pushed him away. She righteously said, Great God, you're too perverted. Shenjuli, He rested his head on his hand. I just think that this method is the most convenient to read memories. What are you thinking? Ning Xuema. She looked at the tent in the distance that should be overflowing with spring. The two people inside shouldn't be doing anything for the time being. They probably wouldn't be done without 2 hours. She thought for a moment and reached out to touch the Almighty's chest. Shenjuli let her touch him and didn't forget to tease her. You want it again? Want your head? Ning Xuema took out a chess set from his chest. Great God, the night is long, and I'm not in the mood to sleep. Let's play a few games of chess. The Almighty's storage space was open to her, but every time she needed something, the Almighty would let her take it herself. She wanted to touch his chest. At first, she was a little uncomfortable, but now she felt very natural. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.